Chapter 281, Isle of Hope, Isle of Tears. The Anglo-Ryan war sovereign and the members of the aerial cavaliers of Frisia hit it off pretty well. Since they all had something in common, the young knights asked the veterans in the aerial cavalry for some pointers about how to take better care of their dependable mounts. The aerial knights had years of experience when it came to handling hippogriffs, and the wisdom they shared made the young knights look at them in admiration. William was quite happy because the veterans were sharing their information to the next generation without asking for anything in return. Because of this, his impression of the representatives from Frisia was raised a few levels. The night was still young and guests were still arriving. Half an hour after William arrived at the banquet, the king appeared with the other two princes. William found an adorable lowly holding Prince Ernest's hand. It was none other than Brianna, the granddaughter of the great chief of the northern tribes. When Brianna's wandering gaze found William, the little lowly winked at him and blew him a kiss. This gesture of hers made the prince holding her hand pout, but Prince Ernest didn't make a scene. Instead, he gave William the stay away from Brianna glare which made the half-elf chuckle inside his heart. Silly little shrimp, William mused as he returned Brianna's wink and flying kiss. I worry about your henpecked future. William laughed at the young henpecked prince in his heart, not knowing that he would suffer the same fate a few years from now. Like always, King Noah made his speech for everyone to enjoy the banquet. His words were greeted by loud cheers from the commoner students of the Royal Academy, who were visiting the palace for the first time. While Wendy and William were talking, the Crown Prince went to stand at the podium and gathered everyone's attention. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Prince Lionel said with a flawless smile that made the young ladies feel their heart flutter. Tonight, our special guest from Frisia has a humble request. She has long heard of the valiant knight commander of the Anglo-Ryan war sovereign and wishes for him to entertain her with a performance. Princess Sidonie, who was looking at William, suddenly turned her head to gaze at the Crown Prince. She didn't mention anything about asking William to perform for her. All she wanted was for the Crown Prince to introduce William to her. However, a part of her was also interested in finding out whether or not William could show her something interesting. Morgana, who was watching everything from within Princess Sidonie's sea of consciousness, curled her lips up in a sneer. Such a petty person, but this is also good, Morgana thought. Well, I'm looking forward to an entertaining performance. Do your best, pretty boy. William's smile stiffened as he looked at the Crown Prince, then at the veiled princess in the distance. After that, he gave Wendy a glance and whispered something in her ears. Told you the princess was going to fall in love with me at first sight, William whispered. Instead of answering him, Wendy pinched his waist with a sweet smile on her face. Feeling the pain of his lover's jealousy, William chuckled and gave her hand a light squeeze before standing up. Since the Crown Prince decided to put him in the spotlight, the half-elf decided to humor him and make him regret his decision. It's times like this that make me glad I acquired the bard job class, William thought as he walked to the center of the hall and bowed to the third princess, who was looking at him from behind her veil with anticipation. I am honored that Princess Sidonie chose me to perform for her, William said with a smile. Unfortunately, my skills are only subpar. I hope that Her Highness won't get offended if I don't meet her expectations. Princess Sidonie was amused by William's introduction, so she decided to give him some encouragement. I've heard many things about Lord William even in our distant kingdom of Frisia, Princess Sidonie said with a voice that was akin to hearing an angel sing. I look forward to your performance. William smiled and nodded his head. Since Her Highness wants to see me perform, this humble shepherd will sing you a song. William summoned his lute and strummed it a few times. At first, he just intended to sing the nursery song, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but decided against it. This was the first time Wendy was seeing him perform, so he decided to get a bit serious. His eyes subtly scanned the crowd and found his music teacher, Fayrite, smiling at him from the audience. William gave the handsome elf a gesture, which made the latter's lips curl up into a smile. It was the gesture that the two of them had made in Lont. When Fayrite was to do the gesture, it meant that he wanted William to play with him as support and vice versa. Since this is your first bardic performance, I will do my best to make you shine, Fayrite mused as he summoned a flute. Seeing that his teacher was all set, William then looked at the third princess of the kingdom of Frisia. I dedicate this song to all the young ladies that are present in this banquet tonight, William said as he firmly held the lute in his hand. May all of you find courage even in your darkest hour. The title of this song is Isle of Hope, Isle of Tears. Job class successfully switched to bard. After hearing the system's notification, William took a deep breath and deftly strummed the strings of his instrument. The rich and melodious sound of the lute, accompanied by the soft and gentle sounds of the flute, reverberated within the hall. William then started to sing. Everyone's eyes in the room widened, especially the first years from the martial division. They were looking at the handsome half-elf as if seeing him for the first time. They already knew that their commander was a strong and brave person, but they didn't expect him to be a good singer as well. William sang and serenaded everyone in the banquet hall and poured out his feelings to his song. In a little bag she carried all her past and history. And her dreams for the future, in the land of liberty. And courage is the passport when your old world disappears. But there's no future in the past when you are 15 years. William's captivating voice and the melody of the instruments plucked the heartstrings of the ladies that were looking at him with infatuated gazes. Princess Sidonie unconsciously placed her hand over her chest as she listened to the heart-provoking song that William was singing. Prince Lionel, who was paying close attention to Princess Sidonie's every action, cursed William internally and regretted his decision to ask him to perform. He thought that the half-elf was a crude person who only knew how to fight. If the Crown Prince knew that William was also a good singer, he wouldn't have forced him to perform even if it killed him. However, it was now too late. Prince Lionel hoped and prayed that Princess Sidonie's expression behind her veil wasn't that of infatuation or admiration. He was afraid that if he were to see her face right now, he might decide to ask the organization to assassinate William in order to appease his jealousy. William, who had immersed himself in the song, was not aware of what Prince Lionel, Princess Sidonie and the rest of his audience were thinking. This was one of his favorite songs back on Earth, and the power of the bard class amplified his feelings of longing tenfold. The result of this combination made those who were listening to him tear up. William continued to sing, and even though he was smiling, a tear still fell down on the side of his face as he sang the final lyrics of the song. Isle of Hope, Isle of Tears, ... Isle of Freedom, Isle of Fears. But it's not the isle you left behind. The half-elf's rendition had captured everyone's hearts, making his teacher, Feyright, very proud of him. William stopped playing and allowed his own voice to finish the final verse of the song, giving it a more soulful ending. The handsome half-elf closed his eyes as he released the emotions from his heart. There was a brief silence before it was broken by a clap that came from Princess Sidonie. She continued to clap and it broke everyone out of their daze. Cheers and applause reverberated in the banquet hall as all of the guests showered William with their praises. Prince Lionel reluctantly clapped his hand, while using all of his willpower to keep the smile on his handsome face. If there was a medicine for regret, he would have already bought it all. The Crown Prince knew that the little interest that Princess Sidonie had for William a few minutes ago, had now grown exponentially after this single performance. Meanwhile inside Princess Sidonie's sea of consciousness, the smile on Morgana's face had disappeared long ago. She had been enraptured by the song, just like everyone else, and closed her eyes to listen to it intently. After William's song ended, she kept her eyes closed as she basked at the lingering afterglow of William's voice. When she finally opened her eyes, she looked at William as if he was the only man on earth. Morgana unconsciously muttered something as her gaze lingered on the handsome half-elf in the distance. Princess Sidonie, who was also looking at William, heard the words that her other half had said and it made her face redden. Fortunately, there was a veil covering her face, so no one was able to see her current expression. I want to make babies with him. Those were the words that Morgana said that made Princess Sidonie want to dig a hole and bury herself inside it due to embarrassment. Chapter 282, Lord William, you are loved. After bowing to Princess Sidonie and the audience, William returned to his seat. Everyone wanted him to sing more, but he made the excuse that his hands were suffering from arthritis and couldn't play the lute anymore. Everyone laughed at his witty joke and allowed him to go. How could a 14-year-old boy suffer from arthritis? Clearly, William didn't want to sing anymore and they didn't have the heart to force the handsome half-elf to remain. They were still enraptured by his voice and melody that they didn't want to force him to do anything. William returned to his table with a smug expression on his face, and the Martial Division students clapped their hands once again to welcome their commander's triumphant return. After seating beside Wendy, the beautiful girl leaned to him and whispered in his ears. Sing for me when we get back to the academy, okay? Okay. The two were about to go into their own little world again when they were interrupted by a light cough from Ian. The two of you should do that when people are not around, Ian stated with a fed-up expression. Everyone's eyes are on the two of you, and you still haven't made your relationship official. Why don't you use this opportunity to make an announcement? William and Wendy reluctantly let go of each other's hands and looked at Ian with a fine, I get it expression. The snot-nosed pansy snorted before picking up the glass of fruit juice from their table. After William's performance, 2 more performances were held before the musicians came up on stage. It was now time for the people to dance, and William took the lovely Wendy to the dance floor and danced without a care in the world. After he finished dancing, Brianna came up to him and proposed to switch partners. William readily agreed and asked Wendy to dance with Prince Ernest. Since her partner was a little boy, Wendy didn't have any objections and curtsied in front of the prince. Ernest had no choice but to dance with Wendy as the half-elf and the lowly exchanged a knowing glance at each other. You're good, Brianna said. How come you didn't tell me you could sing? You didn't ask, William replied. Don't make little Ernie jealous too much. He is a good boy, and I don't want him to hate me. This is just my way of warning him that if he ever cheated on me, I'd dump him and run to you, Brianna said in a mischievous tone. As per the result of the duel, I belong to you. Although I know that Ernest has strong feelings for me, he is still young. In the end, the one who gets to decide who he is going to marry is not him, but the king. Brianna's tone became cold as she remembered when her father and grandfather had almost forced her to marry the prince of the Anisha dynasty. Back then, Brianna felt betrayed. The people whom she thought loved her more than anything in the world, were the same people who threw her into the jaws of a lion. I thought the king was going to announce your betrothal to Ernest. William frowned. I was the one who proposed this to him. Didn't he tell you anything? Brianna leaned on William and said in a low voice that only he could hear. The king is still on the fence because my grandfather might lose his position after 4 years. If our clan isn't able to retain the position of chieftain, marrying Ernest to me would hold no value whatsoever to the Helan kingdom. The little lowly sighed as she rested her head on William's chest. You have to understand that Ernest is still young. Many things can happen in 4 years. Once I lose my value as his fiancé, I'll just be tossed aside like a used rag and would not be given a second glance. William unconsciously tightened his grip on the hands of the young girl in front of him. Brianna was only 11 years old, but her mindset was that of an adult. It was clear that being around her grandfather had taught her how to pay close attention to her surroundings. Because of this, she viewed the world with the eyes and thoughts of a great chieftain. William softly patted her head. Don't worry. If the king or Ernest bullies you, I will make them pay tenfold. This is my promise to you. Lord William, Don't make promises you can't keep. This promise, I will keep. Brianna just smiled and didn't say anything. The two danced silently until the song ended. When the adorable Loli walked towards Ernest, the young prince glared at William. The half-elf brushed it off and mouthed something towards the prince. Prince Ernest frowned, but he still nodded his head. He then held Brianna's hand and escorted her back to their table. That was very thoughtful of you, Wendy commented as the two walked towards their own table. You even dared to threaten a prince to ensure that Brianna would not be treated badly. She is my responsibility. William sighed. I was the one that took her from her family and brought her here in the capital. The least I can do is make sure that the king and Prince Ernest know that there is someone on Brianna's side. When the two were almost at their table, a young lady wearing a veil on her face blocked their path. Lord William, can you please give me the honor of this dance? Princess Sidonie asked. William wanted to say no, but there was no way he could turn down the special guest that had come with reinforcements to their kingdom. He was not an ungrateful person, and knew that he had to accept this invitation even if it made him the target of every man in the room. It will be an honor to dance with you, Your Highness, William bowed. Wendy. I know, Wendy replied. William was about to hold Sidonie's hand, when he felt a soft sensation touch his cheek. Wendy gave Princess Sidonie a sidelong glance after she kissed William. She then headed towards the tables reserved for the Anglo-Ryan war sovereign without looking back. Almost everyone in the room saw this and whispers started to spread among the guests in the banquet hall. Lord William, you are loved, Sidonie giggled as she placed her hand on William's arm. I'm sorry if I'm being the third wheel on this occasion. You're not being a bother, Your Highness, William replied with a smile. That is just Wendy's way of showing her thank you. Princess Sidonie nodded her head. Is that so? I'll keep that in mind, Lord William. Like everyone in the banquet, William was also curious about the face that was hidden behind the veil. However, unlike others, he didn't have any strong feelings or desire to unmask the third princess of Frisia. His was only pure curiosity, while the rest of the men looked at Princess Sidonie as if they were undressing her body. Although her powers were sealed, her body still released natural pheromones that were strong enough to attract any man or woman that was too close to her. You're quite capable, Lord William, Princess Sidonie commented as the two of them arrived at the center of the hall. My power doesn't work on him. Currently, the one dancing with William was not Princess Sidonie, but Morgana. Although Princess Sidonie wanted to dance with William, she was in truth a very timid person. She acted confident on the outside, but when push came to shove, she would take a step back and allow Morgana to take her place. The longer the two danced, the sweeter Morgana's smile became. Princess Sidonie, who was also observing from within her sea of consciousness, noticed the half-elf's expression. Both girls could see the smile on William's face, but they knew he was just faking it. This made the two of them more interested in him and left them to plan what they might do so they could get to know more about him during their stay in the capital of the Helan Kingdom. Looks like your princess is captivated by a boy that is 5 years younger than you, Prince Rufus chuckled as he stood beside his older brother. You need to step up your game, big brother. Shut up, Prince Lionel said in a voice that only Rufus could hear. His tone was so dangerously close to his breaking point that Rufus, who always bantered with him, raised his eyebrow in genuine surprise. You can have your little ice princess, Rufus, Prince Lionel smiled at his little brother like a snake that was about to strike. But if you say another word, I swear by my name that I will make you regret it. Lionel leaned close and whispered in Rufus's ears, annoy me and I promise that I will rape that B*TCH in front of you. Let's see if you can keep that smug expression on your face then. The crown prince walked away and left the banquet. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, he would do something he wasn't supposed to do, and make a fool of himself in front of everyone. Since when did your threats scare me? Prince Rufus watched his older brothers retreating back with a sneer. You're not a snake, big brother, but a worm that I can easily crush under my foot. Your days of playing crown prince are already numbered. Prince Rufus placed his hands on his back as he glanced at the corner of the room. A man wearing a noble's clothing met his gaze and gave him a brief nod. Prince Rufus nodded back and looked at his father, King Noah. The one who will get the key is me, Prince Rufus vowed. After that, let's see what kind of face you'll be making, dear brother of mine. Chapter 283, Day of the Interdivision Battle Part 1. William glared at the giant worm in front of him. He was currently in a weakened state and couldn't use his full power, but nevertheless the battle between the two raged on until the very world itself started to distort. Just surrender, half-elf, the worm said via telepathy. Your resistance is futile. You can't fight the inevitable. William firmly held Stormacala in his hands as lightning crackled from its spear blade. The only thing that is inevitable is your demise, worm, William replied hatefully. I will not forgive you for what you have done. With a shout William charged forward like a lightning bolt, while his opponent turned into a beam of dark light. The two clashed repeatedly, causing cracks within the world, but William didn't care. He would kill the bastard in front of him, even if he died in the process. William abruptly opened his eyes and sat up from the bed, panting for breath. He knew he had a very bad dream, but he couldn't remember everything that happened. The only thing he could remember was him lying on the ground in a pool of blood. Will. A sleepy voice sounded beside him, as Wendy rubbed her eyes and sat up from the bed as well. She was wearing a one-piece, black, nightdress. This was the first time she had worn something like this while sleeping beside William. Spencer would definitely faint in shock if he saw it. Unfortunately, William was still too shaken by the dream to appreciate his girlfriend's nightdress. I'm fine, William replied hoarsely, just a bad dream. Wendy moved closer and gave William a hug. The red-headed boy wrapped his arms around her and buried his head in her chest. Wendy's whispered words of assurance in William's ear as she patted the boy's head to help him relax his nerves. 5 minutes passed, and William's breathing stabilized. Wendy's voice, warmth, softness, and the delicate hand brushing his hair helped him to calm down. He continued to hug her as the tension in his body disappeared completely. In a few hours, the interdivision battle is going to start, Wendy said after she felt William's body relaxing. Are you perhaps anxious about the outcome of the battle? Maybe, William answered. I've been suffering from anxiety this past week. Don't worry. I promise I'll take it easy when we meet in the arena later. Wendy lightly pressed on William's ears, hitting the pressure points in them to help him calm down more. William hummed as he enjoyed the sensation of Wendy's soft hands on his ears. Feeling better. A whole lot better. Thank you, Wendy. You're welcome, Wendy replied. She then looked at the clock hanging on the wall. It was only 2 in the morning and there were still 4 hours before sunrise. Let's go back to sleep, Wendy proposed. We will need it before morning comes. William nodded his head as the two lay on the bed together. Wendy rested her head on William's shoulder and placed her hand on his chest. William held her waist firmly and closed his eyes to sleep. Wendy was right. He would need all the rest he could get in order to prepare for the interdivision battle that would be held at the Grand Colosseum in a few hours. Although it wasn't easy, the red-headed boy was able to sleep after an hour. This time around, he had a dreamless sleep and woke up at 6 in the morning. When he opened his eyes, Wendy was no longer beside him. The half-elf almost panicked, but immediately calmed down after he heard the sound of running water in the bathroom. What is wrong with me? William rubbed his face with his palms in order to remove the last dregs of sleep from his system. Get a grip. Everything is fine. All is well. William gave himself some assurance before talking to the system about Carter's activities. Like always, the system didn't find anything suspicious and reported Carter's actions throughout the night. Maybe I should just kill him and get this over with. William's eyes sharpened as a faint killing intent oozed out from his body. He was seriously considering killing Carter today, but decided to push it aside until after the interdivision battle. A professor dying during this important event would surely cause a big ruckus and an extensive investigation would be conducted. Although William was confident that he could cover his tracks, he was still inside the academy. There could be someone powerful enough to detect the faint traces he would not be able to erase and link the crime to him. This was something that he didn't want to have happen because it would cause many complications and would affect the morale of his night order, family, and friends. While William was pondering about his next course of action, the bathroom door opened and Wendy came out with a towel wrapped around her body. She was using a hand towel to dry her hair as she walked towards William who was sitting on the bed. William extended his hand, and Wendy handed the towel to him. The half-elf then took over the role of drying Wendy's hair while the latter sat beside him. Isn't it hard to maintain long hair? William asked out of curiosity. A bit, Wendy replied. By the way, what do you like more, long or short hair? Long hair. Please, don't cut your hair, Wendy. Don't worry. I prefer to have my hair long as well. After drying Wendy's hair, William went to the bathroom to bathe as well. Half an hour later, the two were fully dressed. They shared a parting kiss before leaving the room since Wendy still had to return to the Magic Division and wait for the tournament to start. William, on the other hand, went to dining room of the Solaris dormitory. The majority of students were already there, but not all of them had an appetite. Anxiety could be seen on their faces, which was perfectly normal because they would be fighting against the Magic and Spirit divisions. This time, they wouldn't be sparring, but fighting for real. The moment William entered the dining hall, all eyes locked onto him. He gave them all a brief nod as he walked to his seat and ate heartily. Unlike the rest of the martial class, he was confident that he could beat anyone he faced in the arena. Seeing that their commander was enjoying his meal, the rest of the students also regained their appetite and started to eat. The instructors, who saw the change in the students' mood, nodded their heads in relief. They had already tried earlier to cheer the students up by offering rewards, but it didn't help their cause. Fortunately, William's confident actions inspired them to eat their breakfast in preparation for the big fight ahead. Another hour passed as the students of the Martial Division walked towards the Grand Colosseum of the Royal Academy. Each division had their own Colosseum, but the Grand Colosseum was the biggest of them all. This was where the major events of the Academy were held and it could easily seat more than 300,000 spectators. William was in the lead and he walked with even steps and radiated confidence. Soon, he stopped and stood still at the entrance of the Grand Colosseum that was reserved for the first-year Martial Division students. William turned around to face the students under his wing and smiled. Are all of you ready to beat up some snot-nosed pansies? William asked. Only a handful of people said yes, and they were mostly the officers under William's night order. Clearly, the majority of the students were not confident in their chances of winning. William crossed his arms over his chest and decided to give them some encouragement. Sons and daughters of the Helan Kingdom, William said in a confident manner. And also comrades that came from foreign lands. My brothers and sisters in arms. William placed his hands behind his back and scanned the anxious faces in front of him. I see in your eyes, the same fear that would take the heart out of me. A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends, and break all. Ding. New title acquired. Title, Copyright Infringement. People die if they are killed. Receives +5 enhancement bonus to agility. Receives +5 enhancement bonus to vitality. Receives +5 enhancement bonus to intelligence. William almost choked on his saliva when he saw the notification that appeared on his status page. He then cleared his throat and continued his speech. In life, we will encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated, William said firmly. A few years ago, the disciple from the Misty sect defeated me in a duel. Back then, I felt really depressed and was on the verge of giving up. The ears of the students perked up because they remembered the day when William arrived at the academy for his knighting ceremony. There, he dueled the disciple of the Misty sect, Kingsley. I trained hard. Very hard, William raised his chin in arrogance. Even if all of you combined all the training that you have done in the past 4 years of your lives, I dare say that you wouldn't even come close to the training, and suffering, that I experienced in those 4 years. Because of this training, I was able to easily defeat that disciple of the Misty sect in our rematch. I will not lie to all of you. Punching that bastard felt good. The half-elf smiled evilly and it made the students of the martial division smile as well. Did you see how far he flew after taking a single punch from me? That, my brothers and sisters, is the sweet taste of revenge. William then turned around to face the grand stadium. He still didn't move from where he stood because he was still not finished with his speech. Today, we may encounter many defeats, but you must never be defeated. Just remember the name of the person that beat you. We will gang up on them after the tournament, and drag them to the back of the academy to beat them until their parents won't be able to recognize them anymore. Let's go. Make sure to raise your chins and show them the might of the martial division. William walked proudly towards the entrance of the stadium, while the students of the martial division cursed him silently. After saying all those encouraging words, their shameless commander ruined it all with the ending of his speech. Ganging up on a single person? How shameless! Kenneth chuckled as he walked towards the entrance of the Grand Colosseum. Priscilla sighed while holding her forehead, as she, too, walked towards the entrance. Spencer and Drake exchanged a glance at each other with a smile, before following their shameless commander. It didn't take long before the rest of the martial division marched towards the entrance as well. They were no longer feeling anxious. Instead, they were now looking forward to the great battle that was waiting for them. Their commander was right. They may suffer losses, but they must never be defeated. Chapter 284, Day of the Interdivision Battle Part 2. Carter carefully checked his professor's uniform as he looked at his reflection in the mirror. He didn't know how it happened, but he felt something foreign inside his body and went on high alert. Carter was sure that the foreign entity had appeared the day that he had met William face to face. Because of this, he decided to play it safe and just stayed inside his residence. Fortunately, the entirety of the students in the first, second, and third year students of the Magic Division were already under his command. He ordered these students to complete the tasks he had left for them to do. Deep down, Carter was feeling incredibly excited. He tried to remove the foreign invader inside his body, but none of his methods worked. He assumed that this was done by William's god essence and his interest in his future vessel grew exponentially. I wonder what other secrets are waiting for me to uncover, Carter thought as turned his head to leave his room. Time to start the first phase of my plan. The professor activated the suggestion spell and gave out a command. He was looking forward to seeing the expression on William's face when he saw. Wendy, come with me for a while, EST said with a smile. There's something that I forgot in the Magic Division and I will need your assistance. EST then turned to look at Ian who stood beside him. Ian, stay here and take command of the students while I am away. I will return as soon as possible. Understood, young master. Ian nodded his head. EST left the Grand Colosseum with Isaac and Wendy following behind his back. The system didn't detect anything suspicious with their conversation since Wendy was the Magic Division's secretary, and one of EST's officers. Upon arriving at the premises of the Magic Division, EST took Wendy to the garden. It was the same garden where Wendy had brought William, when he accidentally wandered inside their division. Wendy was quite familiar with the path because it was the same path that led them to her secret place. Just as she expected, EST stopped in front of the statue. Head Prefect, what are we doing here? Wendy asked. EST looked at the statue as if he was admiring its beauty. A few seconds later, a sigh escaped his lips as he said the words that had been locked up inside his heart for a very long time. It's not fair, EST said with his back still facing Wendy. I was the one who saw him first. Why must you get in the way? Head Prefect. Wendy, why must you get in the way? Can't you just find other boys to become your boyfriend? Why must you choose William of all people? EST then turned to look at Wendy with a hateful expression. Why? Why must you get in the way of my love? Answer me. Why? Wendy was shocked by the sudden change in EST's expression. She didn't expect to see the hate-filled look on the handsome boy's face, and she could tell that he really hated her to the bone. I don't understand, Wendy stuttered. What does the head prefect mean by getting in the way of your love? What does this have to do with Will? You don't understand. EST laughed in contempt. What is there to not understand? I was the one who saw him first. I was the one who loved him first. For 4 years, I always thought of him. Then, someone like you came along and snatched him from me. Tell me? How should I deal with this hate I am feeling right now? Answer me. Aside from the Mindweaver spell, Carter had also added another spell called Dark Desire in the latest batch of candies that he had distributed among the students of the Magic Division. Like the name suggested, it is a spell that would bring out the deepest and darkest desire within a person's heart. EST's love for William was distorted due to the corruption of his sea of consciousness, and the spell Dark Desire multiplied this corruption tenfold. Right now, EST hated Wendy with a vengeance. The only reason why he hadn't attacked the young lady in front of him was due to Carter's absolute order to keep her alive. Head Prefect, you love Will. Wendy asked. But, both of you are. Before Wendy could even finish her words, she felt a sudden pang of pain behind her neck before her world descended into darkness. Isaac was there to support Wendy's body and prevented her from falling on the ground. After the deed was done, the statue moved aside revealing Carter with his hands behind his back. Bring her inside, Carter ordered. EST and Isaac nodded and brought Wendy inside the secret passage. The two spells had firmly taken hold of their sea of consciousness and they thought that what they were doing was the right thing to do. After the three children were inside the secret passage, Carter then looked in the direction of the Grand Colosseum and sneered. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but if you don't hurry, I might get impatient and have fun with your girlfriend. I'll only give you half an hour to get here. Carter smiled in a lecherous manner. Don't keep me waiting, or else. Carter chuckled as he entered the secret passage. Not long after, the statue moved to block the entrance as if the earlier incident had never happened. I'll kill you. William screamed internally as he rushed towards the magic division. The moment Isaac attacked Wendy, the system immediately informed William of what was happening. William's eyes were already bloodshot as he used his movement technique to its limit. The Grand Colosseum was not that far from the magic division. At most, it would only take him 5 minutes to reach his destination. However, every second that passed felt like years to him. For some reason, the system's trackers weren't working inside the secret cavern that was hidden in the garden of the magic division. What William and Wendy didn't know was that the underground lake had another secret exit near the teachers' residences. The moment Carter stepped into that place, the system's tracking on him had been cut off. Naturally, the system had reported this anomaly to William, but as the head prefect of the first years, he just couldn't leave them when the tournament was about to start. He planned to investigate Carter's whereabouts after the opening ceremony had finished. However, William and the system didn't expect that the professor had this trump card hidden up his sleeve. The half-elf had never run this fast in his lifetime. He was pushing himself to the limit just to arrive a second sooner, so he could save Wendy from the clutches of the lecherous professor who had been targeting her from the start. When William arrived at the garden, he immediately moved the hand of the statue to allow him entry into the secret passage. A few seconds later, he arrived at the underground lake and saw Wendy tied up on one of the walls of the cavern with steel chains. William breathed a sigh of relief because aside from being unconscious, she was completely unharmed. Well, that was faster than I expected, Carter said with amusement. He was leaning on the cave wall not far from where Wendy was chained. EST and Isaac, on the other hand, stood beside Wendy with their weapons drawn and pointed at her body. What do you want? William roared. Release Wendy right now. Okay. I'll release her, Carter replied with a smile. That is what you wanted to hear, right? Carter sneered. He then waved his hand and erected a magic barrier around Wendy, EST, and Isaac. He didn't want to take any chances, and he knew that he had the upper hand in this situation. He had waited for this moment for days, and he would not allow William to escape his grasp. As long as he had a hostage, the half-elf would be forced to listen to his demands. What do you want? William said through gritted teeth. The half-elf had been secretly calculating the best way to save Wendy, but the professor's magic barrier prevented him from doing anything reckless. It was at this moment when he realized that he wasn't dealing with a small fry, but a cautious person that had planned this scenario in order to lure him into a trap. Carter appraised William from where he stood. The longer he looked, the more satisfied he was with the new vessel that he would soon be inhabiting. Drink this first, Carter said as he threw a vial that contained a purple liquid towards the boy. Only by drinking this will we start our conversation. William caught the vial and appraised its contents. He hesitated after reading the information of the vial, but he still drank it in the end. Soon, William felt his world spin around him as he fell down on his knees. Carter's smile widened as he walked towards the fallen boy who was suffering from the effect of the special serum that he had made. Such strong willpower, Carter said as he lifted William's chin with his finger. Very admirable. FCKU. William said through gritted teeth. Carter didn't seem to be offended by William's words, instead he took out another vial from his pocket. He then used his hand to pry open William's mouth and poured its contents inside it. I know that you are not an ordinary person, so I'm not taking any chances, Carter stated. Here, have another. After emptying the second vial, Carter took another one and forced William to drink it. William's eyes rolled into the back of his head as he lost consciousness completely. After checking the boy's vital signs, the professor lifted the boy's body with one hand. The half-elf hung limp in Carter's hold like a puppet waiting to be manipulated by a puppeteer. The two of you guard the entrance, Carter ordered. Do not leave your spot until I tell you. Understood. Yes. EST and Isaac walked towards the passageway and left the underground lake. EST gave the unconscious William a brief glance before turning his head away. As he walked towards the exit of the cave, a single tear streamed down the side of his face. He wiped it away in a casual manner as if it was a nuisance. Carter didn't see this because he wasn't paying attention to anyone aside from the boy in his hand. The reason why he ordered EST and Isaac to leave was because he would start the process of taking over William's body. Although the two teenagers were under his spell, there was a small chance for the both of them to regain control over their senses after seeing Carter's true form. When Carter felt that the two kids were now outside the cavern and guarding the entrance, he then activated the spells embedded in the students inside the Grand Colosseum to proceed with the next phase of his plan. Go on my little pets, Carter said as he empowered the spell that lay dormant within the consciousness of the students under his command. Start a massacre. Kill as many as you can. Cover the Colosseum grounds with the blood of your friends and acquaintances. Kill for me. Offer your lives as a sacrifice for my rebirth. Carter's laughter echoed off the walls surrounding the underground lake. The moment he had been waiting for was finally at hand. Chapter 285, Start of a Massacre. King Noah walked towards the podium and scanned the thousands of students that were gathered in the Grand Colosseum. There should have been more, but they had fallen due to the dungeon outbreaks that had suddenly erupted in many places in the kingdom. That event greatly saddened him, and the Dean of the Royal Academy, for the students were the seeds that they were supposed to nurture in order to keep their kingdom strong. After taking a deep breath, King Noah stood in front of everyone and started his opening speech. For many years, our kingdom has stood tall within the southern continent, King Noah said in a voice that was magnified using a magic artifact. 4 years ago, we withstood the beast tide that dared to threaten the people of our lands. We were victorious in that battle at the price of many of our brave countrymen. A few months ago, another major event happened without warning. This time around, we were forced to seek the help of every able-bodied young man and woman to protect the land that we call our home. King Noah paused and a profound silence fell upon the students that were standing in the Colosseum grounds. The first years, up to the 4th years of the martial, magic, and spirit divisions were all gathered and looking at King Noah with sad expressions. Some of their good friends had fallen during the dungeon outbreak, leaving only their memories behind. King Noah raised his voice as he commended the bravery of the students that had stood their ground, so that many of their countrymen could keep living a peaceful life. Hellenians are strong, King Noah said firmly. We will never cower. We will never surrender. We will face all that threatens our lives and freedom. The students raised their hands and roared in unison. King Noah's speech made their blood boil with determination to protect their kingdom. This tournament is a way for you to know your strengths and your weaknesses. A way for you to experience fighting against many different kinds of people, King Noah explained. Naturally, all of you will be rewarded. Not just the winners, also those who fought bravely. I look forward to the exciting matches that I will see today. Without further delay, I now declare the start of the Interdivision Battle of the Hellan Royal Academy. Suddenly, an ear-piercing screech resounded inside the Grand Colosseum as a red portal appeared on the east side of the spectators' gallery. Thousands of stone gargoyles flew out of the portal and started to attack those who were seated near it. The audience screamed and scattered in fear as the demons started a massacre. Knights! King Noah roared. Protect the citizens. Yes. The knights of the kingdom immediately charged towards the eastern side of the Colosseum, while the Grand Archmage hurried towards Noah in order to protect him. Magicians! Protect the citizens. Matthew ordered the 4th years. Fight in groups of 4 and protect each other's backs. The 4th years immediately moved out towards the east to help the knights subdue the threat that suddenly appeared in their interdivision ceremony. The head prefects of the martial and spirit divisions also ordered the students under their wing to reinforce the defenders. Damn you demons! A 3rd-year student from the spirit division summoned spirits in order to fend off the gargoyles that were flying around them. Be careful, a lady cleric summoned a barrier to prevent the barrage of stone bullets from hitting his companion. At that moment, a 2nd year from the magic division appeared beside them. I came here to help, the 2nd-year magician said as he stood beside the 2 3rd years. Good. Make sure to support our healer, I'll handle the rest. Understood. The young spirit user was about to summon more spirit beasts when he was blasted away by a fireball that came from the 2nd-year student. Mark, the healer shouted. She was about to deploy a barrier to protect himself, but the 2nd-year student was faster than her and knocked her unconscious, using the back of his sword. A gargoyle then descended from the sky and scooped the unconscious healer from the ground and flew back towards the portal in haste. Their role was to bring back the talented ladies of the Royal Academy to become the broodmares of their demon race. What are you doing? Stop! Traitors! Shouts of anger and disbelief reverberated on the Colosseum as the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd-year students of the magic division backstabbed their fellow students. The magicians are in league with the demons. Kill them! An enraged swordsman from the 4th-year martial class roared as he charged towards a 4th-year magician that was standing not far from him. Wait! We are on your side, the magician raised his hand to prove that he had no intention to fight. Unfortunately, the widespread backstabbing of the magicians had already made it impossible for anyone to believe his words. Die! The swordsman pierced the magician's chest, killing him instantly. The magician died and fell on the ground with shock written on his face. He couldn't believe that his friend had attacked him without showing any shred of mercy. Soon, he, along with the rest of the people that had died in the Colosseum, turned into particles of light. 4th years! Rally to me! Matthew shouted in order to recall the 4th years of the magic division. Defend yourselves, but do not attack anyone. I repeat. Defend yourselves, but don't attack anyone. Leah, who was standing beside him, created a water barrier to protect the 2 of them from the attacks that were coming from the spirit and martial division. Just like the rest of the students, both of them were caught by surprise by the unexpected turn of events that decimated almost a 1/3 of the students within the Colosseum grounds. The 4th-year magicians hurriedly went towards Matthew and resisted the combined attacks of their fellow students, while also defending against the gargoyles that were firing stone bullets from the sky. Tens of thousands gargoyles suddenly appeared in the battlefield, and it was almost impossible to wipe them all out using an area of effect spell. What made things even harder was that the magicians had turned coat and attacked the defenders from all sides, increasing the chaos in the battlefield. Angorian Knights. Attack the younger magicians, but do not target the 4th years. Priscilla commanded after killing one of the magicians with an arrow. Remember, target only those that are actively attacking the other students. Yes. Brutus and Bruno's eyes were bloodshot as they attacked their classmates who were wantonly killing the students from the other divisions. They didn't know what was happening, but all the people that they knew were acting like berserk spellcasters who couldn't distinguish between friend or foe. What is happening to your classmates? Spencer shouted as he fought his way towards the twin brothers who were in the middle of the crossfire. Where's Wendy? Brutus summoned an earth wall to defend against a fireball that came from a third-year student. The fireball exploded, but the stone wall remained firm and stable. Wendy left half an hour ago with the head prefect, Bruno answered as he fired multiple fire bolts at the third year that attacked them. Unfortunately, the third year was well versed in fire magic and easily neutralized Bruno's attack. Where did they go? Spencer asked as he channeled his aura on his spear. He then threw it towards the third-year magician without waiting for Bruno's answer. Spencer's weapon aura allowed him to increase the speed of his attacks exponentially. Whether it was thrusts, slash, or throwing attacks, all of them were multiplied tenfold once he imbued his aura into his weapon. The spear flew like a bullet and pierced through the magician's chest, ending his life in the process. The last thing I heard from the head prefect is that they left something in the magic division, Bruno answered as he fired several fire bolts at his classmates who were running amok. Maybe they're still there. I got it. Both of you stay alive. Spencer ran towards the fallen magician to retrieve his spear. As soon as he retrieved his spear, the magician turned into particles of light, which made Spencer sigh in relief. He then hurried towards the exit of the arena in order to find his twin sister and protect her from the demons that had suddenly invaded their academy. Just as Carter ordered, the first, second, and third-year magicians had positioned themselves among the members of the Spirit Division. These students were rich in spirit powers and would be the perfect incubators for the next generation of demons. This was why Carter ordered them to only knock the girls unconscious, while killing the boys using a surprise attack. A black gargoyle that was 3 times bigger than the rest stood near the portal and observed the mayhem that was happening. His name was Eidos, the right-hand man of Commander Zagel. The demon commander ordered him to carry out the plan and ensure that Carter would be able to safely leave the academy under his watch. So far, the plan was proceeding smoothly as the students of the Royal Academy died left and right. This was all in accordance with their commander's order to start a massacre. Eidos was extremely happy that in a short span of time, hundreds of girls had already been captured by the gargoyles, and were taken to the Red Portal to be brought back to the demon continent. Just where are you, Carter? Eidos thought as he scanned the crowd, looking for his comrade at arms. At most, we can only stay here for 10 more minutes. If you're not here by then, we are going to leave you behind. Although Eidos was ordered by Commander Zagel to bring Carter back safe and sound, he had long hated the slyworm for sucking up to their commander. Although he was the right-hand man of the demon general, Carter was always given special treatment by his superior, which made Eidos hate Carter to the bone. He just pretended to be civil on the surface, but if there was an opportunity to backstab his rival, he would not miss the opportunity to do so. I can always say that we were forced to retreat because the human reinforcements arrived quickly, Eidos thought. Yes. Let's go with that plan. The black gargoyle smirked because it thought that it had found a good excuse to leave his comrade behind in the academy. What he didn't know was that his comrade had no intention of returning to the demon continent. Instead, the professor was busy stuffing potions inside William's mouth, in order to weaken the half-elf's resistance. He intended to personally enter William's sea of consciousness to devour his soul and completely take over his body. Chapter 286, On the Verge of Collapse. While the massacre was rampaging in the Grand Colosseum, a few individuals had appeared inside the academy grounds and scattered in different directions. No one saw them come, and no one would see them leave. Princess, rest assured, none of these foul beasts will touch a single strand of your hair. The knight captain of the aerial cavaliers stood in front of Princess Sidney with his sword drawn. The rest of the knights also didn't move from their position and created an impenetrable defense to protect the young lady seated behind them. I'm not worried, Princess Sidney replied. As long as the knights of Frisia stand before me, I will not be afraid of anything. The magic knights among the aerial cavaliers fired their long-range spells in order to attack the gargoyles that flew near their location. Even though they wanted to help, their princess' safety was their top priority. Also, their flying mounts were not with them at the moment, so they couldn't engage the flying monsters in the sky. Since that was the case, they focused on the one thing that they could do, and that was to protect Princess Sidney at all cost. When the attack started, Prince Lionel was seated beside Princess Sidney. However, after seeing the traitorous magicians attract their classmates, the knight captain of Princess Sidney's royal guard politely asked the crown prince to return to King Noah's side. In fear that Prince Lionel would suddenly turn coat and attack the princess, they used a diplomatic approach to make the prince evacuate. Seeing that the knight captain was firm in his decision, Prince Lionel decided to take a step back and agree to their request. However, deep inside, he was feeling irritated because an opportunity to save Princess Sidney was lost due to the knight captain's interference. I wonder what he would think, if you told him that you'd rather let a gargoyle snatch you away than chat with him for a minute longer? Although I agree with your words, I can't possibly say that to a crown prince of a kingdom. Big sister, what are your thoughts about this incident? Something is very fishy about this incident. Sidney, swap with me for now. I want to be ready just in case of an emergency. Okay. Inside the underground cavern, William lay on a small altar, near the lake. A black liquid dripped from the side of his lips, as Carter poured the contents of an 8th vial in the half-elf's mouth. This vial was specially made to weaken a person's soul, forcing it into a lethargic state. Usually, Carter only used 2 of them whenever he changed vessels, but William was special. The professor wouldn't underestimate someone that had god essence in them, so he prepared a dozen soul-suppressing serum to make William's soul unable to even lift a finger to stop him. After emptying the 12th vial, Carter ran a diagnostic spell into William's body. Soon, a triumphant smile appeared on his lips as he prepared to leave the vessel he had been using for the past few months. Carter opened his mouth, and a 2-foot-long purple worm emerged from it. It had 3 eyes on its head, and the blood-red pupils gazed at William as if he was the most delicious meal that it had seen in its life. After successfully disengaging itself from Carter's body, the professor fell on the ground. Although the body was still alive, it was now an empty husk, bereft of any spirit. The astral worm had devoured the soul of the original Carter months ago and had stayed in his body up to this day. The worm thought that it would be using the professor's body for many years to come, but William's sudden appearance made it change its plans completely. It then flew towards William's mouth, and forced itself inside it. The half-elf was in an unconscious state and was unable to offer any kind of resistance. Soon, the worm arrived in William's sea of consciousness and immediately felt the divinity that it had longed for in its dreams. Yes. 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 Finally, the worm happily screeched as it flew toward the center of William's sea of consciousness. There, he saw a boy, kneeling on the ground, and gasping for breath. The worm didn't waste a single moment and immediately attacked the boy. It planned to devour William's soul and take over his body completely. William's eyes stared at the 7-meter-long astral worm that was rushing towards him, and activated his appraisal skill. Astral worm. Soul devourer. Spirit beast. Threat level, S, low. Centennial beast. William tried to stand, but his legs refused to move. Host, your soul has been weakened by 80%. Currently, you don't have the capability to fight the spirit beast. Even in your peak power, you are still not a match for it. I know. William replied. Even communicating with the system was hard because his spirit energy had decreased drastically. He gathered all the magic power that he could currently muster in his current state. At most, he could use it to initiate one full-powered attack, and hope that it would work. We will proceed with the last resort. Host, that is suicide. I'd rather commit suicide, than be devoured by this bastard. Activate it, now. The system knew that William was right. Now was the moment of life and death. Both of them had no other choice, but to confront the Centennial Beast with everything they got. Forcefully merging job classes. Ice Mage. Dark Mage. Archer. Monk. Spearman. Thief. Disciple of Thunder. Fighter. Cavalier. Sun Knight. Merging. Failed. 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 William clenched his fist as he summoned Stormacaller in front of him. The spear of the Ainsworth family shone with defiance as lightning snaked around its body. Lightning God War Art, 13 form. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. Go for the kill, William said through gritted teeth. Gabulg. William also channeled all the magic power he currently had and boosted Stormcaller's power as much as he could. The lightning spear charged towards the approaching astral worm like a railgun. It roared and thunder followed in its wake. It was a weapon that had gained sentience long ago, and was only waiting for someone that had the affinity of lightning to wield its powers. After William unlocked the Disciple of Thunder, the Ainsworth family heirloom once again appeared on the battlefield, like it did, thousands of years ago. It had realized William's current situation, and the threat that was fast approaching its current master. Empowered by William's Lightning God War Art, and his magic, it flew towards the astral worm like a raging lightning bolt. It was the only thing that stood between the Devourer of Souls, and a helpless shepherd, that was on the verge of collapse. Chapter 287, Took You Long Enough. Mordred arrived at the Grand Colosseum and immediately transformed to help deal with the demonic invasion. After a brief moment, a 6-meter-long red dragon appeared inside the Grand Colosseum and started to obliterate all the gargoyle in its path. After its initial rampage, the dragon targeted the gargoyles that were carrying the girls towards the portals. It grabbed the gargoyles in the air and crushed them with its powerful claws. It then caught the falling girl and placed her on the ground before continuing its battle with the gargoyles in the air. Matthew glanced at the red dragon and sighed in relief. He had recognized his father, so the burden in his heart eased. With additional reinforcements helping them, he ordered the 4th-year students to focus on the girls that were falling out of the air to prevent them from falling to their doom. After the initial confusion, the other divisions now knew that the 4th-year students of the Magic Division were still on their side, so they stopped attacking them. They now focused on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd-year Magic Divisions, who were still helping the gargoyles capture the students of the academy. Eidos narrowed his eyes and personally engaged the red dragon in an aerial battle. The commander of the demons used an artifact that Commander Zagarl had given him that would boost his strength by 5 times for a short period of time. The gargoyle's strength immediately soared up to millennial rank and he faced the red dragon head-on. Their collision sent shockwaves through the air and repelled the gargoyles surrounding them. The red dragon was only at the peak of the centennial rank, so the gargoyle managed to push it away in their initial clash. Even so, it didn't back down and engaged Eidos in a dogfight. Each time the two beasts collided, powerful gusts of wind would blow, sending demons and humans in every direction. Aside from Eidos, there were 5 more centennial-ranked gargoyles that were sent to oversee the operation. Although they were in the middle ranks, they were still centennial-ranked creatures which made them a grade above ordinary fighters. Man, this is quite exciting. The last time we had this much fun was when we went to the south to help the young master, Damien said. Let's go, it would be bad if the boss thought that we were slacking off, Gideon commented. Suddenly 2 portals appeared behind the 2 men. Above Damien, a giant portal appeared and one of the apex predators of the sky screeched as it made its entrance. It was none other than a rock. It was a flying beast that was at the peak of the centennial rank. Damien appeared on the back of the giant bird with his arms crossed over his chest. The rock flew towards one of the centennial-ranked gargoyles and engaged it in combat. "Let's go, partner!" Gideon shouted. A giant beast slithered out of the portal and bowed its head, so that Gideon could ride it. The name of the snake was Bashi, and it was Gideon's most powerful beast companion. It was a half-dragon half-snake creature, and was also at the peak of the centennial rank. Without waiting for Gideon's order, the snake zoomed in on the other centennial gargoyle in the distance. It leaped into the air and lashed its powerful tail, bringing the flying demonic creature to the ground. Eidos frowned when he saw that the reinforcements had arrived faster than he had anticipated. They had only been around for 5 minutes, and yet, his forces were now being decimated at an alarming pace. "Retreat!" Eidos ordered. "Protect those carrying the broodmares at all costs. Head towards the red portal as fast as you can." After issuing his orders, Eidos joined both of his hands and pummeled the head of the red dragon, sending it crashing towards the ground. He then flew towards the gargoyles that were carrying the girls to protect them from those who were trying to save the students. The 2 remaining centennial gargoyles followed Eidos' lead and helped their subordinates resist the frenzied attacks of the knights and the students of the academy. "Since you're still not here, then I'm leaving you behind," Eidos sneered as he and the rest of the centennial gargoyles entered the portal. Thousands of gargoyles were still flying within the Grand Colosseum. They were brought here as suicide fighters, and their role was to kill as many people as they could while their superiors escaped through the red portal. They were beings created from magic cores, so Commander Zagarl didn't care whether they lived or died. For him, they were disposable cannon fodders that could be replaced at any given time. Their only value was to capture their targets and defend the portal until their superiors, and the girls, had been safely delivered to the demon continent. "Stand back!" Emrys, the Grand Archmage of the kingdom, ordered. He raised his hand in the air and activated a 7th circle spell to obliterate all the demons that were blocking the portal. "Firestorm!" Emrys shouted after a short chant. Roaring flames surged above the Grand Colosseum as giant fireballs fell down like rain. Everything that it touched was reduced to ashes. The students hurriedly protected themselves with defensive magic in order to protect themselves from the explosions that were happening in front of them. In that single spell, thousands of gargoyles died, but a few thousand still remained. After realizing that they didn't have much time left to live, the gargoyles went into a frenzy and descended from the sky en masse. They were like suicide bombers that were planning to take anyone they could with them to the afterlife. Screams of anger and pain resounded within the stadium as several students turned into particles of light after the collision with the gargoyle horde. While this was happening, Eidos and the rest of the demons were flying through the warp tunnel that would send them back to the demon continent. It didn't take them long before they saw the exit of the tunnel. Eidos had a big grin on its face as he left the tunnel behind. He was already imagining the praises he would receive from the demon general, Zagarl, and the rewards that would be showered on him after a successful mission. Eidos' grin stiffened when the familiar scene of the demon continent didn't appear in his sights. After exiting the tunnel, the first thing he saw was a bald monk, drinking a jug of alcohol, while sitting on the shoulder of a giant golden ape. "Yo! Took you long enough," Dwayne greeted the gargoyles with a smiling face. He then drank the jug of alcohol in his hand and burped afterwards. "I was getting bored, you see." Above the giant golden ape, several wyverns flew and looked at the gargoyles in disdain. They had already killed the gargoyles that had appeared before them and all the girls that they had captured had all been saved. Eidos looked at the ground. Pieces of stone had been scattered everywhere. They were the body parts of his subordinates who had died after encountering Dave, the Arabro, and the wyverns after exiting the portal. The commander of the demon invasion roared in anger. He thought that his mission had been a complete success. He thought that what was waiting for him were the praises and rewards from the demon general. Instead, what waited for him was the giant, golden, fist of the Arabro that didn't give the gargoyle commander a chance to vent his frustration. Chapter 288, The Power of the Jack of All Trades Part 1. Lightning and thunder roared in fury as Stormacaller charged towards the astral worm in a straight line. The astral worm was a demonic creature and had a distinct weakness against the lightning element. Even so, it didn't decrease its speed and faced the spear head-on. "Your resistance is futile," the astral worm said via telepathy. The disdain in its voice echoed throughout William's sea of consciousness as it looked down on William's last struggle. "I've already devoured the souls of more than 50 powerful people in my lifetime, and I have also absorbed their powers. You will suffer the same fate, so just submit and allow me to devour your soul." A protective barrier covered the astral worm's body as it collided with Stormacaller. William gritted his teeth as he urged Stormacaller to pierce through the worm's barrier, but it was to no avail. The face-off lasted for a full minute. Before the power behind the spear's charge dissipated, the worm lashed out its tail and sent it flying towards the east side of William's sea of consciousness. It then charged full speed at William in order to devour him once and for all. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. "Solile, come forth," William pleaded. The ring transformed into a golden spear and stood in front of William. The red-headed boy held the spear and channeled his aura into it. "Go," William ordered. Solile flew towards the east where Stormacaller was sent by the astral worm's attack, leaving William behind. When the astral worm was only 10 meters away from William, the boy activated Solile's special ability and instantly teleported to where the spear was. The worm's jaw slammed down on the location where William kneeled a few seconds ago and chewed aggressively. Tasting nothing inside its mouth, it then turned its head to look towards the east and saw the boy grasping the golden spear for dear life as it sped off into the distance. Resistance is futile, the astral worm roared and lunged towards the east. In a span of a few seconds, it had already closed the gap by half as it used another ability that it had taken from one of its previous victims. The astral worm had activated a skill called Wind Rider that allowed it to fly in the air with short, powerful bursts. Its eyes locked on William, making sure that he wouldn't be able to escape its sights. Suddenly, the weapons that were embedded in William's consciousness flew into the air and attacked the worm. William was using every trick he had, but the centennial-ranked worm didn't bat an eye and just used its magic barrier to repel the attacks from the weapons. Intent fusion. William said softly as his body glowed. This was the second stage of his weapon intent which allowed him to merge with his weapons. Soleil's body blazed as it curved sideways to attack the astral worm that was hell-bent on catching it. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. 2 rays of light, one dark, one golden, zigzagged across William's sea of consciousness. Every time the 2 beams of light intersected, cracks would appear in the sky. The sea below the 2 combatants churned as if it was boiling, heralding that the end of the world was at hand. The astral worm was impressed by William's willpower, but it knew that it was only a matter of time before the boy burned out the remaining power in his soul. The destruction that was happening around them was proof that William was nearing his limit. Deep inside, the soul-devouring worm was happily anticipating the moment when William's soul power would run out. When that happened, the new vessel that it had dreamed about would finally fall into its hands. The 4 gods that were watching William from the Temple of 10,000 Gods had grim expressions on their faces. They watched helplessly as William fought with his life on the line, but they also knew that it was all for naught. Gavin clenched his fist as he watched one of his 2 followers about to meet his end by the jaws of the astral worm. After watching for half a minute, the god of all trades unclenched his hands as he made his decision. Power gathered in Gavin's body as he locked onto the divinity that he had given William many years ago. Lily, Issei, and David looked at him with serious expressions, but they didn't do anything to stop him. What Gavin was attempting to do was to forcefully possess William's body using the power of the god contract. This act allowed the believers of the gods to use their powers for a short period of time. However, doing this was not advised if the god's follower was in a severely weakened state like William. If Gavin made a mistake, he would shatter William's soul the moment he descended into the half-elf sea of consciousness. God, Gavin said with determination. Descent. Gwark. William's blood spurted out of his mouth as his soul's connection with Soleil disengaged. He wasn't able to endure the last clash between himself and the astral worm which dispelled the effect of his intent fusion. William's body fell helplessly from the sky and the astral worm didn't waste any time and immediately rushed towards him. Ha 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 ha, the astral worm roared in laughter. It then opened its jaws to devour William's soul. It's over, half-elf. Your soul is mine. Not on my watch. A booming voice slammed down on the astral worm's consciousness which made it flinch in pain, momentarily stopping its charge towards William. Suddenly, a golden beam shot down from the heavens and covered William in a radiant light. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. William's eyes widened in shock as he saw a familiar figure standing before him. Gavin, his patron god, stood with his hands behind his back and a sorrowful look on his face. Will, do you want to experience the power of the Jack of all trades before you once again cross into the afterlife? Gavin asked. Gavin and William both knew that he couldn't be saved anymore. The damage to his soul had already started and Gavin's descent made its demise even faster. During William's and Celine's training, the half-elf had died many times within his sea of consciousness. However, he still revived because it took a very powerful attack to destroy a soul. Unfortunately, his opponent this time specialized in devouring souls. There wouldn't be a second chance once the astral worm had eaten its prey. All that waited for the soul that got devoured was a slow and painful absorption. The astral worm would then acquire that soul's powers and become stronger. Gavin's descent was not done the proper way. It was a forceful possession that disregarded the will of the follower that had chosen him as their patron god. However, Gavin would rather personally escort William's soul back to the afterlife, than have it devoured by the astral worm and be used as its nourishment. William smiled and nodded his head. I'm sorry, Gavin. I tried. Unfortunately, this is as far as I can go. I know. Gavin nodded. I'm sorry. It's fine. I pray that you will have a better life after you reincarnate. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. Merging. Failed. Let me experience it once, William said softly. The power of the Jack of all trades. As you wish, Gavin replied with a sad smile. He then pressed his palm against William's head and channeled his divinity. System Force Override, Gavin ordered. Forcefully upgrade all job classes. System Force Override initiated. Job classes selected. Upgrading. Ice Mage Ice Wizard. Dark Mage Dark Wizard. Archer Ranger. Monk Zen Master. Spearman Templar. Thief Rogue. Disciple of Thunder Prince of Thunder. Fighter Weapon Master. Cavalier Dragoon. Sun Knight Champion of the Sun. Merge job classes. Gavin ordered. Merging job classes. Ice Wizard. Dark Wizard. Ranger. Zen Master. Templar. Rouge. Prince of Thunder. Weapon Master. Dragoon. Champion of the Sun. Merging job classes. Success. New job class acquired. Job class, Argonaut. Argonaut, temporary. Heroes are not born, they are made. In a time long forgotten, when the gods still played with the lives of mortal men, a group of the strongest and bravest heroes banded together and rose up among the masses to challenge their reign. They completed the many quests that the gods had imposed on them and finally gained their approval. In the end, this group of heroes were hailed as Argonauts. Mortal men and women who had won humanity's freedom and ushered in the dawn of a new era for mankind. Increase magic damage resistance by 50%. Increase physical damage resistance by 50%. Increase physical damage plus 50%. Increase magic damage plus 50%. Host has learned skill, Charge of the Argonauts. Ding. New title acquired. Jack of all trades. Jack of all trades, temporary. A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Increase magic damage dealt by 100%. Increase physical damage dealt by 100%. Receives plus 500 enhancement bonus to all stats. Great power surged over William's soul as Gavin's divinity empowered his entire being. Go. Will, Gavin said softly. Crush this worm and make sure that it will never hurt anyone again from this day onward. Gavin turned into particles of light as he returned to the Temple of 10,000 Gods. When the blinding light receded, the astral worm glared in William's direction. A sphere of light glowed in the sky like a miniature sun. Soon, the light faded and William appeared wearing a golden suit of armor. The half-elf was wearing a winged circlet, and holding a spear in each hand, namely, Stormacaller, and Soleil. On his back, several tendrils of light that were similar to a golden aurora borealis, fluttered like a cape. William stared at the astral worm with a calm expression on his face. The giant that seemed to be undefeatable a while ago, now looked like a little worm that he could crush if he were to simply step on it. Lightning God War Art, 12th form, William said as he raised Stormacaller and Soleil at the same time with the intention to strike. Strike with precision, Gungnir. William threw both spears towards the astral worm. Fire and lightning crisscrossed across the skies with a vengeance. The astral worm instinctively knew that it wouldn't survive if he got hit by the two spears that filled it with dread. It immediately moved to the side in order to evade, but it was all for naught. Your resistance is futile, William muttered as he gazed at his adversary's last struggle. You can't fight the inevitable. Soon a scream filled with fear and pain echoed within William's sea of consciousness. It was only the start of the astral worm's suffering, for William intended to kill it countless times, until its soul ceased to exist. Chapter 289, The Power of the Jack of All Trades Part 2. Name, William von Ainsworth. Race, half-elf. Health points, 170,300/282,500. Mana, 168,200/290,000. Job class, Shepherd, LVL 30. Subclass, Argonaut, Max. Strength, 55, plus 545. Agility, 50, plus 520. Vitality, 30, plus 535. Intelligence, 60, plus 520. Dexterity, 45, plus 550. Titles. Giant Slayer. Domain Master. Jack of all trades. The astral worm exploded into 1,000 pieces as Stormacaller and Soleil pierced its body simultaneously. Blood and flesh fell down in William's sea of consciousness like rain, but the red-headed boy didn't bat an eye and just stood perfectly still. Soon, Stormacaller and Soleil descended towards the ground and activated their powers. Lightning scattered into the sea, followed by roaring flames that wanted to burn everything in existence. The astral worm planned to play dead and reform its body once William lowered his guard. It thought that it was a perfect plan because not many knew that the souls inside the sea of consciousness wouldn't be destroyed so easily. Unfortunately, it didn't know that this was not the first time that William had fought inside his domain. He knew, more than anything else, the rules behind the Battle of Two Souls. Curse you, the astral worm hatefully roared as its body parts were incinerated to ashes. Soon, its giant body reformed, but there were certain parts of it that were missing. Clearly, the damage it took from William's empowered attacks were not easy to regenerate. The astral worm hatefully charged at William with the intention of bringing him down with him. This was a mistake on its part because it still thought that William had merely recovered to his former peak of power before he drank the soul-suppressing serums that the astral worm forced him to drink at the start. Ice prison, William said, and the giant worm was enclosed in a giant block of ice. He then raised his hand and a black sword made of pure dark magic appeared in front of him. William casually slashed at the block of ice, splitting it into two, killing the astral worm for the third time. It didn't take long before the astral worm materialized once again. However, this time, it didn't choose to fight. Instead, it chose to flee. William watched it with disdain and allowed it to run away for a brief period of time before uttering two words. Dual X. The astral worm stopped mid-flight and was forcefully dragged back towards the half-elf who had a devilish grin plastered on his face. You can run, but there is no escaping the inevitable. William summoned Rongominiat and pointed it at the shrieking giant worm that was doing its best to escape. Lightning God War Art, first form. Illuminate the world. Rongominiat. A blinding beam of light erupted from the tip of the spear and enveloped the astral worm in its entirety. A few seconds later, the astral worm reappeared once again. Half of its body was already gone and failed to regenerate. Forgive me. Please, have mercy, the astral worm pleaded. You can treat me as your subordinate. I promise, I won't betray you. If you like, you can even make me your slave. I don't care, just please, spare me. Have mercy. William summoned his bow and quiver. He then knocked the holy arrow on his bow and took aim. When your victims pleaded to you for mercy, did you spare them? William asked. You didn't, right? Lightning God War Art, 8 form, William sneered. Exterminate, Cursalakatos. No. The astral worm tried to run away once again, but it was already too late. The holy arrow multiplied not in the hundreds, but 1,000 replicas and descended on the giant worm's body like rain. William didn't stop his barrage and kept on firing one arrow after another. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Hundreds of thousands. Stormacaller and Solile joined the fray and turned William's sea of consciousness into a stormy world of lightning and fire. William's domain was near collapse, but he didn't care. The end was already at hand, and he had already accepted his fate. And no more, I beg you, the astral worm begged. This time, only its centennial core remained. William tilted his head as a mischievous smile appeared on his face. You like to devour souls, right? William gripped the centennial core firmly in his hand and smiled. Did you ever wonder if there would come a day when your own soul would be devoured? No? I bet you didn't think that far. System, switch the experience points allocation to the Shepherd job class. Experience allocation has been successfully changed. The centennial core trembled in William's hand as it sensed a bad premonition. It immediately struggled continuously to break free from William's hold, but the half-elf had it in a firm grip. Core absorption. Core absorption initiated. Spare me. The dying screams of the astral worm were like music to William's ears. He watched as the centennial core slowly, but surely, shrink in size because William told the system to absorb it as slowly as possible. He wanted the soul-devouring worm to experience what its victims had felt during the last moments of their lives. 2 minutes later, the core was absorbed completely, bringing an end to the astral swarm reign of terror in the world of Hestia. Ding! Gained EXP, 950,000. Congratulations! You have slayed a centennial beast. Special monster first kill bonus EXP, 500,000. Ding! You have absorbed a centennial core. Gained EXP, 950,000. The Shepherd job class had reached its max level. Would you like to advance to the next job class? Yes/no. Sorry, Sir David, William sighed as he softly landed on the ground. I guess I will not be able to see the advancement of the Shepherd job CLA. William wasn't able to finish his sentence because the effect of the Jack of all trades had ended. His body fell backwards and laid on the ground without moving. All the strength in his body had left him, but his consciousness remained. The half-elf stared at the sky that was slowly crumbling apart. I guess, the end of a world would look similar to the scene, William thought as his eyes slowly closed. I'm sorry, everyone. This is as far as I can go. It was at that moment when he vaguely felt a pair of hands wrapped around his body. Due to his current state, William was only able to open his eyes halfway. Don't worry, everything will be all right, a familiar voice said softly. You owe me one, Will. Snot-nosed pansy. William stared at Ian who was carrying him towards the underground lake. He didn't expect that when he opened his eyes, he would be looking at the real world, instead of his inner one. Without any warning, Ian jumped into the lake, carrying William in his arms. His body glowed and transformed right before William's eyes. Not long after, William saw a girl with long hair that was as blue as the ocean. An unfamiliar, yet beautiful face appeared before him. Even so, he instinctively knew who it was. No matter what form Ian took, William believed that he would be able to identify the snot-nosed pansy even if his mortal enemy were to turn into a mermaid. A pair of purple eyes stared back at him, and they were looking at him in an affectionate manner, which was completely different from the gaze that Ian always gave him. William stared at the otherworldly beauty in front of him and recalled the warning that Belle had given him not long ago. While the half-elf was lost in thoughts, Ian's face moved closer and gave him a kiss. She transferred air into his body as she dove deeper towards the center of the lake. After passing the trial of enlightenment, Ian gained the ability to temporarily unlock the seal that was placed on her by the goddess Astrid. William had already lost consciousness at that point because his soul was nearing its limit. When Ian finally arrived at their destination, she used her spiritual power to temporarily maintain William's current condition. After that was done, she placed a hand over her chest and started to sing. Ian sang an otherworldly song and the magic power within the lake swirled around her and William. The underground lake that was hidden in the magic division was not an ordinary lake. It was the exposed part of a ley line that supplied magic power to the Royal Academy. Ian, in her mermaid form, had the ability to convert magic power into spirit power, and use it however she wanted. When the battle in the Grand Colosseum started, she assigned her duty to Brutus and Bruno and went to find EST and Isaac. Luckily, she also had the ability to sense the location of her twin and headed towards the garden in haste. After Carter was defeated in William's Sea of Consciousness, his hold over the students vanished as well. When EST and Isaac recovered their sanity, they immediately realized the terrible things that they had done. Ian arrived just in time to see the two of them enter the secret passage to the lake and hurriedly followed behind them. After the trial in the Kirinter Mountains, Ian was able to sense spiritual power once again. Because of this, she was able to tell that William's soul was on the verge of collapse the moment she laid her eyes on him. Ian didn't waste any moment and immediately came to his rescue. Dense spiritual power swirled and gathered around Ian and William. Ian continued to sing until she reached the limit of her control over her spiritual powers. A blue gem, the size of a pigeon's egg, appeared on Ian's chest and started to absorb the spiritual energy swirling around them. The dense spiritual energy flowed towards the gem on her chest, as if it was a small black hole that was greedily sucking in everything around it. Soon, all the spiritual energy had been absorbed and Ian's singing stopped. You better take responsibility after you've recovered, Ian said with a hint of exhaustion in her voice. I will give you the most precious treasure of the mermaid race. Ian braced herself as she plucked the blue gem out from her chest. Blue blood gushed out as soon as the gem was taken out from her body, but she ignored it. The blue-haired beauty endured the pain and pressed the gem over William's own chest. She watched as the gem embedded itself into William's skin and merged with his body. Only after the gem disappeared from her sight, did she manage to breathe a sigh of relief. The wound on her chest gradually healed by itself, but the luster in Ian's blue hair, purple eyes and body dimmed as well. What she had given William was half of her spiritual core. In essence, she had given him half of her heart. It was the only way that Ian could think of to prevent William's spiritual world from being destroyed completely. Sleep and recover, Ian whispered softly. Quarrel with me again after you do. I will be waiting for you, Will. Ian leaned close to kiss the unconscious half-elf one more time to give him some air to breathe. She then swam towards the surface, where her love rivals were anxiously waiting for the red-headed boy's return. Deep inside her heart, Ian hoped that William would treat her better when he woke up. When she had seen William lying on the ground, dying from having his spiritual world destroyed, she finally realized that the feelings she had for the boy were just as strong as the feelings that EST and Wendy had for him. Because of this, she decided to throw caution into the wind and let her true feelings burst forth. As to what the consequences of her actions would be, she didn't care. After all, she would make the half-elf in her embrace take full responsibility for getting into a situation where she was forced to give him her heart. Chapter 290, Are you also in love with Will? The battle in the Grand Colosseum continued for another half an hour after Ados entered the portal. After losing their commanders, the gargoyles decided to use suicide attacks in order to bring as many people as they could with them to the afterlife. Most of them succeeded before shattering into pieces, while others were destroyed by the strong fighters on the human side. King Noah and the Grand Archmage, Emrys, looked at the scene with grim expressions on their faces. Fortunately, we were forewarned, King Noah muttered softly. If James hadn't shared this information with us, many lives would have been lost today. Not only that, Your Majesty, Emrys commented. All the students that the demons captured would have lived lives far worse than death. True. King Noah agreed. It is impossible for the demons to have staged an event like this on their own. Perhaps the organization is also behind this incident. The chances are very high, Your Majesty, Emrys frowned. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that this is not yet over. Simon did well in connecting the entire academy to his personal domain. Although we used many resources, the results are still satisfactory. I'm sure that the demons will think twice before they set their sights on the Hellan Kingdom again after this incident. They've suffered many losses in this mission of theirs. Both men looked at the knights, and the students of the other divisions, that had surrounded the first, second and third-year students of the magic division. Although Carter's control over them had dissipated, their minds were still unstable due to the effect of the spells inside their sea of consciousness. For now, they were rounded up at the center of the Grand Colosseum where everyone could keep an eye on them. Although this treatment seemed unfair, no one wanted to take chances. Especially after the backstabbing incident that happened not long ago. How is he? EST asked anxiously as he looked at William's face that was as pale as a candle. He's safe, for now, Ian replied. His spiritual world has collapsed, but his life is no longer in danger. It's just that. Just what? EST gazed at Ian, who was still in her mermaid form. Ian took a deep breath before she continued her explanation. It might take him months to fully recover. However, if I stay by his side to constantly gather spiritual energy to help restructure his sea of consciousness, I can shorten it, but that would still take a minimum of 3 months. EST felt something sour inside his mouth as he looked at the half-elf who had almost died after fighting with Carter. To make things worse, EST also felt guilty because he played a role in luring William to the place where Carter had set a trap for him. Is there anything that we can do to hasten his recovery? EST inquired. Is there anything that I can do? Ian shook her head firmly. I have already given him a dense amount of spiritual energy. Giving him any more at this point will cause harm to his body. I intend to help him repair his sea of consciousness from the inside. That is all that we can do for now. Can I help? Is there a way that I can help him? EST looked at Ian with a pleading gaze. Ian didn't have the heart to say no, so she reluctantly nodded her head, and told EST that he could come with her when they entered William's spiritual world. Will. A voice sounded from behind Ian and EST. Wendy had regained her consciousness and looked at her lover, who was currently cradled in Ian's arms. What happened to him? Wendy ran towards them as she held William's shoulder anxiously. Who are you? What did you do to him? EST took a deep breath and explained the situation to Wendy. He told her everything that happened right after she was knocked unconscious by Isaac. How Carter forced William to drink an unknown serum in the battle that happened within the half-elf sea of consciousness. Wendy listened calmly to EST's explanation from start to end. After hearing that William was temporarily safe, the anxiousness in her eyes lessened, but it was soon replaced by sadness. I'm sorry, this is all my fault. EST bowed his head in apology. If I was only strong enough to resist the spell, all of this might have been prevented. It's all my fault. Wendy shook her head as she looked at her head prefect who was stricken by guilt and grief. Head prefect, it's not your fault, Wendy replied. I'm sure that Will also doesn't blame you for the things that happened. If there was someone to blame, it would be none other than that hateful demon who instigated all of this. Wendy gnashed her teeth in anger as her eyes locked on Carter who was lying on the ground, unconscious. Now that the astral worm had left his body, all that remained was an empty, living husk. EST followed Wendy's gaze and shook his head. Clearly, he didn't want Wendy to do anything reckless and harm the soulless body lying on the ground. Let the king handle this, EST stated. Someone has to take the blame and preserving the professor's body is a must because it will serve as evidence. Also, the original owner of that body is innocent. He was just one of the many victims of that demonic worm that devoured people's souls. Wendy reluctantly nodded her head as she looked at Ian. You still haven't answered my question earlier. Who are you? Instead of answering Wendy, Ian undid her transformation. The blonde beauty's mouth opened wide in shock as she stared at Ian who was looking at her with a serious expression. Why you a girl? Wendy's grip on William's shoulder tightened as she stared wide-eyed at the boy in front of her. Why are you pretending to be a boy? Are you doing this to get close to Will? Wait. I'm not pretending to be a boy, Ian replied. I was originally a girl, but was placed under a powerful curse. This is the reason why I am currently a boy. And just so you know, I also like William. After almost losing William to the demon, Ian felt a heart-wrenching pain inside her chest. It was then when she truly realized that the boy whom she always quarreled with had already taken a place inside her heart. Wendy gazed straight into Ian's eyes and understood that she was dead serious. Wendy then turned her head to look at EST who was standing beside her. Earlier you said that I got in your way, are you also a girl? Yes. EST nodded. Do you also like William? I've liked him for years. After getting the answer to her question, Wendy shifted her attention to Isaac. Are you a girl as well? Yes, Isaac answered. Are you also in love with Will? Wendy inquired. If not for the fact that the poor half-elf was already in a half-dead state, Wendy would have definitely smacked his head to vent out the frustrations that were welling up inside her heart and called him womanizer. Me? Isaac pointed at himself with a surprised expression. No. I'm not in love with William. We're only friends. Okay, good. Wendy patted her chest in relief. That's one less problem to deal with. She then looked at her pale-faced boyfriend, before reaching out to take him away from Ian's embrace. The blonde beauty took a deep breath, before glancing at EST and Ian who was looking back at her with complicated gazes. Let's talk about this messed up relationship later, Wendy proposed. Let's have the clerics take a look at William first. After that, the three of us need to have a proper talk about how we will proceed from here. EST and Ian nodded their heads. Since Wendy now knew their secret, there was no reason for the two of them to hide their feelings for William any longer. Oliver watched this scene from the shadows and sighed. He arrived just in time to witness the three girls that liked William make their feelings known to each other. Fortunately, the half-dead half-elf was still unconscious, and was spared from the messy relationship that he had unknowingly created. Oliver subtly entered William's shadow in order to protect him from any further threats that might arise out of nowhere. His mistress, Celine, would have also come to the academy, if not for the letter from the organization that mysteriously appeared at her doorstep. The letter explicitly told her not to interfere with the organization, and in return, they would not target her one and only disciple. The leader of the organization had personally placed his seal on the letter, which forced Celine to stay in Lant. However, the letter didn't tell her not to send anyone to look after the boy, so she immediately sent Oliver to ensure William's safety. The organization had its members scattered across every part of the continent. If they were to set their eyes on targeting William, the half-elf would definitely not be able to resist their assault. Because of this, Celine decided to compromise and not interfere with the organization's attack at the academy in order to spare her disciple from having additional enemies who specialized in schemes and deceit. Chapter 291, Duty Calls and the Enemy Awaits. When Wendy and the others exited the Garden of the Magic Division, an anxious Spencer suddenly appeared out of nowhere and rushed towards his twin sister. He had searched the entire division looking for Wendy, but he couldn't find her. Fortunately, when he was about to head to the other divisions, he saw them exit the garden and immediately ran in their direction. What happened to the Knight Commander? Spencer asked with a serious expression. Are you okay, Wendy? Are you hurt anywhere? I'm fine, big brother, Wendy replied. Are the demons still around? This was the most pressing concern for them at the moment because William was currently unconscious and unable to protect himself if the demons decided to rampage inside the academy. I don't know. Spencer shook his head. I left the Grand Colosseum to look for you, right after the demons appeared. Wendy felt touched because her twin brother prioritized her safety and rushed towards the magic division to look for her. However, when Spencer volunteered to carry William, she firmly rejected his offer. Instead, she urged her brother to check the current situation, while they headed towards the Lunaris dormitory. Spencer agreed to his sister's proposal and returned to the Grand Colosseum. Since EST and the others were with her, and his Knight Commander was currently out of commission, the overprotective Siskin deemed that his sister was currently safe and left with peace of mind. The Lunaris dormitory was the dormitory of the first years in the Magic Division. EST proposed to take William to his room to rest, while they waited for the battle against the demons to settle down. They were confident that the knights, instructors, and the students would be able to drive the demons away. This was why they decided to prioritize William's safety instead of going to the Grand Colosseum. A man wearing a black robe snuck inside the treasure house of the Royal Academy. He and his men used the demon invasion as a distraction to infiltrate the place where ancient artifacts and treasures were stored within the academy. The black-robed man was one of the members of the organization that helped the demon race set a warp portal in the Grand Colosseum. If the astral worm was there, it would recognize the man as the same person that had given it Carter to be used as a vessel in order to enter the academy and carry out its mission. Due to the sudden turn of events, the defenders of the treasury were forced to split their forces and reinforce the defenders at the Colosseum. Those that remained behind were easily dealt with by the members of the organization who specialized in fighting. Sir, all the guards had been eliminated, a man wearing a black mask reported. Good, the black-robed man replied. Guard all entrances and make sure that no one disturbs me. Yes, sir. The man wearing the black mask nodded his head and stood at the entrance to prevent anyone from interfering with his superior's mission. After walking for a few minutes, the black-robed man stopped in front of a huge black door that was covered in many ancient runes. It was the entrance that led to the treasure house. Only the dean of the academy had the key to open it. Fortunately, they managed to steal the key a day ago, while the dean was having a meeting outside the academy. They left a perfect replica behind in order to prevent Simon, the dean of the academy, from finding anything suspicious. The black-robed man took out a small silver orb from his storage ring and raised it above his head. Let the glory of the Hellan Academy forever burn brightly, the man shouted, and the silver orb in his hand glowed. The door of the treasury slowly opened, revealing mountains of gold coins, jewels, weapons, armors, and other artifacts that had been stored in the academy for many years. The lips of the black-robed man curled up into a grin as he stared at the priceless treasures that were inside the treasure vault. His leader ordered him to ransack the academy's treasury in order to increase their organization's funding. They had used many resources and manpower to instigate the war between the kingdoms and dynasties, and also support the demon race's invasion. Their coffers had decreased by half and they needed some immediate sources of income to keep their operation going smoothly. The black-robed man was about to enter the treasure vault when a hand patted his shoulder from behind. Good job, a voice filled with happiness sounded from behind the robed man. I'll take it from here. You can rest in peace. Before the black-robed man could even react, the same hand that had patted his shoulder grabbed his head and gave it a twist. The sound of bones breaking reverberated within the quiet treasure vault. James tossed the dead body aside and entered the treasure vault with a devilish smile on his face. Time to loot this place, James chuckled as he activated the storage ring in his hand. Like a black hole, all the treasures within the vault were sucked towards James' ring until nothing was left. The old bandit of Lon whistled in satisfaction as he swaggered out of the treasury. If King Noah, Emrys, and Simon were there to witness James' act of banditry, all of them would definitely summon their weapons and fight the old coot to the bitter end. Although James cared for the Hellan kingdom, he cared more about his family and the subordinates that were under his command. He didn't expect much from the king, and he certainly didn't expect him to confer upon him additional rewards for the information he had given him. For him, the organization was just a convenient scapegoat. He could put the blame on the organization for everything. I can just tell them that I arrived late, James thought as he smiled evilly. Suddenly, Ezio appeared before him holding a short sword stained with blood. Everyone has been eliminated, sir, Ezio reported. The battle in the Grand Colosseum is also nearing its end. Perfect timing. I'll go check on Matthew and Leah, you go and find William. Knowing that boy, he'd probably be at the center of this mess. Yes, sir. Ezio disappeared into a black mist and flew in the direction of the magic division. James watched him go before turning his head to look at this right side. How long are you planning to hide? James asked. Are you going to report me to His Majesty? He finished sarcastically. James' rival, the sword saint of the Hellan kingdom, Aramis Bran Caliban, materialized out of thin air and stared at him with disdain. I've always known that keeping you around was a mistake, Aramis said as he snorted. You even used the demons and that secret organization to fill up your pockets with gold coins. How devious of you. Why, thank you, James replied. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to fight, or are you going to fight? Aramis didn't bother to reply, and instead, unsheathed his sword from his scabbard before taking a fighting stance. James, on the other hand, summoned his giant axe and rested it on his shoulder. Both fighters released their aura and were about to clash against each other when they heard the tolling of a bell. Soon, more ringing sounds resounded all over the capital and the two men's expressions suddenly became serious. Back in the Grand Colosseum. None of the students had died during the demon invasion because the king, the Grand Archmage, and the Dean of the Academy had made preparations beforehand and linked the Grand Colosseum to Simon's domain. The students that had been killed had been automatically transported to a safe location where they would be attended to by the clerics of the kingdom. However, before they could even celebrate their victory, the grand bell of Gladiola started to ring. King Noah, Emrys, and Simon looked towards the east with grim expressions. The bell of Gladiolas had been rung and it only meant one thing, and one thing only. The war has started, Noah said in a voice laced with barely restrained anger. He had long heard that an unknown organization was moving behind the scenes and fanning the flames of war from the shadows. However, he never expected them to act this decisively and use every means at their disposal to make things difficult for the Hellan kingdom. King Noah clenched his fist so hard that the ground beneath his feet crumbled as the aura in his body burst forth. To arms! King Noah shouted. His voice boomed within the Grand Colosseum as he called out to the warriors of his kingdom. Rally to me! Duty calls and the enemy awaits. Chapter 292, First Step for World Domination. Are you sure the two of you want to do this? Ian asked. You might not like what you see. I'm ready, Wendy said firmly. EST didn't say anything and just nodded his head. The three were planning to enter William's Sea of Consciousness using Ian as the medium. They wanted to know if there was anything else that they could do in order to help the boy regain consciousness. Wendy lay on William's right and hugged his body, while EST lay on his left, holding his hand. Ian transformed into her spirit form and lay at the edge of the bed, cradling William's head. Synchronization, Ian softly muttered, and her spirit power enveloped all four of them in a blue bubble. This is William's spiritual world. Wendy covered her mouth with a hand as she looked at the unbelievable scene in front of her. Ian had said beforehand that a person's sea of consciousness reflected the inner thoughts of each person. Wendy's breathing grew ragged as a pang of pain spread inside her chest. She gazed at the broken sky that was similar to a cracked eggshell. Huge portions of the sky had fallen into the sea like pieces of debris from a collapsed building. The sea under their feet was grey, which also reflected that the grey world was on the brink of complete and utter destruction. Wendy's eyes suddenly found something red amidst the greyness of the world. She immediately ran in that direction with tears streaming down her face as she cried out the name of her beloved. Will. The image of the cheerful half-elf that hugged her every night, kissed her every night, and made her feel safe and secure, flashed inside her mind as she neared the fallen boy that was surrounded by the debris that had fallen from the heavens. A pained and sad wail reverberated inside that dying world as Wendy held William's soul in a tight embrace. EST looked at William from afar and cried. She covered her lips with her delicate hand as her body trembled in pain and suffering. Ian, who stood beside her, wrapped her arms around EST and pulled her close. It's fine, Ian said softly. It will take time, but he will definitely recover. I will do my best to make him recover. EST hugged Ian tighter as her tears fell down like rain. She blamed herself for what happened to William. If only I was stronger, this wouldn't have happened, EST said between sobs. It's all my fault. No, Ian assured her. It's the fault of the demons. If not for their vile actions, none of this would have happened. You, Wendy, and William are just victims of their evil schemes. Don't worry, as long as the three of us work together, we will be able to restore him to his peak condition. Ian said these words, not only to reassure EST, but to reassure herself as well. She knew that it would take a few months for William to recover. But, she needed to be strong in order to prevent the two girls, who also liked William, from blaming themselves for what had happened to him. She hoped, with every fiber of her being, that the boy would soon open his eyes and tell them that he was fine. 20 miles off the shore of the southern continent, several ships had anchored themselves. They were the cruisers from the Silver Moon continent and they were waiting for the right time to invade the southern continent. Soon the sounds of bugle horns broke the peace as several warships appeared 10 miles away from their formation. Elador, the 19-year-old prodigy of the elves, peered through his telescope to identify the newcomers. It didn't take long for him to recognize the flags of the human warships that belonged to the Creator Empire. Elador had already been told that there might be other forces that were planning to invade the southern continent aside from them, but he wasn't too worried. There were 4 elven archmages that had accompanied them on this mission, and they were more than enough to deal with any situation in the open seas. Also, his grandfather told him that, if possible, he shouldn't pick a fight with the humans until they arrived at their destination. Put the fleet on high alert, but do not engage the humans without my order, Elador ordered. Yes, young master, his subordinate replied and immediately issued Elander's orders. Elador stared at the human fleet and sneered. His clan was one of the factions within the Silver Moon continent that detested humans. This was also why he was chosen among the other 11 prodigies to be the grand commander of this mission to invade the southern continent. The ancient elven families had long wanted to prove to the world that they were the superior race, and all other races should bow before them. If not for the fact that it took many years for the world tree to fully recover, they might have launched an invasion long ago. It could even be said that this mission to conquer the southern continent was only their first step towards world domination. Elador believed that after this mission ended, he would be one step ahead of his peers in being able to court the elven princess who had accompanied them to this mission. Although the king of the elves had taken a back seat when it came to politics, and allowed the elven council to take over, it didn't change the fact that all the elves still showed him their utmost respect and reverence. Just as the elves were observing them, a handsome young man in his late teens looked back at the elven formation in the distance. He had a smile on his face as he casually waved for his men to stand down. Just like Elador, the young man was in his late teens and was hailed as one of the strongest warriors among the young generation in the Creator Empire. His name was Jason, the 5th prince of the Creator Empire. His mission was to stake their claim in the southern continent and make his cousin sit on the throne as an empress. For the young teen, this mission was a walk in the park because there were very few forces in the world who would dare get in their way. He was not afraid of dealing with the long-eared elves, whom they treated as slaves in the central continent. He was even looking forward to their future clash with the elven race so that he could bring back some beauties to warm his bed. Jason was not only strong, but very intelligent as well. He knew that this was not the time to fight with the elves because they needed all of their manpower to conquer one of the 4 kingdoms that held the axis of power in the southern continent. Until then, he would leave them alone and settle their differences after they had landed on foreign soil. Both young commanders were belittling each other's races inside their minds. Even so, they still tolerated each other as they waited for the moment when the skies of the southern lands would change their color. That was the sign that the time was ripe to charge forward and stake their claim among the rich and fertile lands of the south. It was also the prelude, for an all-out war that would reshape the balance of power between all the warring factions that were vying for supremacy. Chapter 293, Important Talk with the Gods. Will, time to wake up. How long do you plan to sleep? An adorable voice asked. If you don't wake up soon, I'm going to give you a kiss. William's eyes slowly opened when he heard the familiar voice that whispered in his ears. The adorable face of the lowly goddess appeared in his vision with her lips puckered outward to give him a smooch. William hurriedly raised his hand to block her lips, but was surprised by what he saw. Instead of his hand, the one that blocked Lily's lips was a furry, padded, hand that made the lowly goddess giggle. William is so shy, Lily chuckled as she raised William high in the air and spun him around. I should have done this sooner. You look cuter this way. Lily? Why are you here? William asked via telepathy. Where am I? Better yet, what am I? It didn't take long for William to realize that there was something very strange about his body because it felt weird. It was as if he wasn't fully accustomed to his body and was having trouble moving its parts. All right, calm down, little Will, Lily happily poked William's nose with a big grin on her face. I know that you are currently confused, but my explanation will have to wait until we arrive at our destination. Lily happily carried William out of her residence to meet with Issei and David. Gavin was currently resting in his hut on the outskirts of the temple in order to recover. The forceful god descent he made to save William had rendered him paralyzed and it would take him a long period of time to fully recover. We're here. Lily announced as she arrived at the picnic area of the temple where several other gods were lazing around. Issei and David were already seated beside a picnic table and waved at the approaching lowly goddess. How did it go? Issei inquired. It went perfectly well. Lily replied with a victory pose. David played with his beard as he stared at the pink teddy bear in Lily's hands. Since Lily had declared that her attempt was successful, then the consciousness residing within the stuffed toy was none other than William. Lily casually placed the teddy bear on top of the table with a big smile on her face. Ta-da! I present to you, Little Will version 1.1. Issei and David humored Lily by clapping their hands to praise her. William, who was still in a confused state, tilted his head as he waited for an explanation. Can someone tell me what's going on? William asked. Did I cross over? Am I dead? Lily giggled and poked the teddy bear's nose and started her explanation. Technically, you are now a half-dead half-elf. The only thing that is keeping you from crossing over is the newly implanted spirit core inside your body. If not for that, you'd be entering the cycle of reincarnation right at this moment. William tried to recall what happened before he lost consciousness and remembered a pair of purple eyes that looked at him in an affectionate manner. He knew to whom those pairs of eyes belonged to and a complicated feeling rose in his heart. Looks like I owe her one, William thought as he sighed internally. You have been sleeping for 3 days and, during that time, your body and spirit have been taken care of by 3 beauties, Issei commented on the side. You should properly thank them when you recover. 3 days? I've been sleeping for 3 days. William gasped in shock. What happened while I was unconscious? Are the others safe? What about Wendy? Calm down, David replied. All of them are safe. At least for now. For now. Yes. For now. William wanted to know more, but David didn't say anything else. Lily and Issei also didn't say anything to follow up, which made William feel anxious. Look. Before you worry about others, why don't you worry about yourself first? Lily said as she patted her forehead. Do you know how serious the damage to your soul is? It's a miracle that I was still able to drag your consciousness out of your body. William quieted down after hearing Lily's words. If his soul remained inside his body, and only his consciousness was dragged out, it just showed how dire his current situation was. Meh, there's no use worrying about things outside of your control, Issei said as he patted the teddy bear's shoulder. What you need to think about is what you are going to do from here. Clearly, you can't return to your body in your current state. Even if you were to return, nothing would change. You will just remain in a vegetable state for a month or 2. William closed his eyes and did his best to calm down. Issei was right. Even though he wanted to return to his body, the damage to his sea of consciousness remained. After calming down, he once again opened his eyes and faced the 3 gods who supported him from the heavens. What should I do now? William inquired. Is there a way for my body to recover? Can any of you help me? The 3 gods exchanged a glance and looked back at him with serious expressions on their faces. The damage in your sea of consciousness will recover in time, but it will take at least a few months for it to fully recover, Issei answered with confidence. Right now, Ian and the others are doing their best to speed up the process, but you can't rush something like this. Souls are very delicate things. It takes a great amount of spiritual energy to damage them, and requires the same amount to restore them. David cleared his throat as he looked at the depressed teddy bear in front of him. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't awaken from your current state. Of course you can. In fact, you can even fight, but you can only do that for a very short period of time. If you exceed your limit, your already crumbling soul will collapse completely. When that happens, it will take at least 1,000 years for your soul to recover and enter the cycle of reincarnation. William sighed in relief when he heard that there was still hope for him to awaken in the real world. Although the part about his soul collapsing completely scared him, he was more worried about staying in a vegetable state for months. Meh, let's not talk about these things first, Lily interjected. Let's talk about the important ones. William, it's about time that you learned how to use the divinities that we gave you. Don't tell me that you only thought of my lollipop as an ordinary snack to lure cute little girls to follow you around. Although I don't mind if you do that, people around you will definitely treat you as scum. Your lollipop isn't just a snack. William scratched his head. I thought it was just a candy that dispelled other status effects. It can do more than that. Of course it can, Lily said in an arrogant manner. At most, you are only using 10% of its full power. And you're using mine at 25%, Issei commented. You're also not fully utilizing the power of the shepherd job class, David joined his friends in nagging at William. You're missing out on a lot of things. The three gods stared at William with mischievous smiles on their faces. Don't be in a hurry to return, little Will, Lily said with a big grin on her face. You will be undergoing divinity training so that you don't waste the precious gifts that we gave you. I still can't stomach the fact that a worm almost benefited from the blessings that we gave you. If that really happened, I would have descended into your world and ripped that worm to pieces. After Lily's outburst, the three gods dragged William to the outskirts of the temple to start his divinity training. Issei, and David, shared the same opinion as the lowly goddess. If William had known how to utilize the divine powers that they had given him, even in his weakened state, the astral worm wouldn't have been able to beat him so easily. Chapter 294, Heart to Heart Talk Part 1. Just, what are they doing? They're playing rocks, scissors, and papers to see who will be teaching you first. How about you, Sir David? William inquired. Aren't you going to join them? David played with his beard and smiled. I decided to be the last one to mentor you. That way, I don't have to worry about time constraints to make you understand the true power of the shepherd class. William looked at the smiling god beside him and nodded his head. In truth, he wanted to know more about his main job class. Unlike dark magic where he had a teacher to teach him the ropes, the shepherd job class was a mystery to him. He had played many RPG games back on Earth, but none of those games had the shepherd job class. In regards to the taming system, he doesn't really understand how it worked. More often than not, he had to use contracts in the name of the god of contracts as a medium in order to temporarily add Spire and Psoglov to his herd. As for Fenrir and the other troll hounds, they had sworn their allegiance towards William and automatically became part of his herd, without being tamed. In short, the shepherd job class didn't have a tame skill that William could use to tame herd-type beasts. He just assumed that he could tame them because the system classified the monsters around him by whether they could be tamed or not. He was hoping that with David's mentorship, he would be able to understand what the shepherd job class was truly capable of doing. A loud shout broke William out from his daze as Issei raised his fist triumphantly. Lily, on the other hand, hatefully stomped her feet on the ground and gave William a pout. She looked so cute and adorable that most boys would unite and start a crusade against Issei if they were to see Lily's current state. Let's go William, Issei said as he picked up the teddy bear with a grin. It's time for you to understand the power of the divinity that I gave you many years ago. Before William could even say goodbye to Lily and David, the world distorted and both he and Issei disappeared without a trace. Lily clicked her tongue as stomped her foot in irritation. Tisk. This was a good opportunity to turn William into a Lilicon. Unfortunately, Issei still got him first in the end. So annoying. You shouldn't say your thoughts out loud, you know. David commented. Especially when the other gods are around. What do you understand, old man? Lily sighed. You're old-fashioned. You don't even know what mo means. David pretended not to hear Lily's words and decided to visit Gavin in his hut. He was worried about the backlash that his friend received after he had done his best to keep William's soul from shattering. Seeing that David was not interested in hearing her whining, Lily returned to the temple to wait for the next batch of candidates to arrive. Unlike Issei, who had already reached his maximum number of followers, Lily still had a long way to go. Fortunately for her, there was not a lack of people who would happily sign her contract after seeing the bright smile on her adorable face. William, listen well because what I am about to tell you is important, Issei said as he sat in front of William. The two of them were inside his palace, where most of Issei's women resided. They were currently taking turns to hug the cute teddy bear to their voluptuous chests, not caring that blood was already seeping out of the teddy bear's nose. Girls, do you mind? Issei grabbed William from his lovers and prevented them from having their way with him. We boys are having an important talk. Aside from Abby and Gabby, all of you disperse, ... Darling, you're so mean. HMP. Let's see if you are going to get any sleep tonight. You better make us feel good later or else we will make you regret it. Several other complaints were made by Issei's lovers, but they all followed his order and left the room. William stared at the two beautiful twins that stood on Issei's left and right sides. They seemed to be in their early 20s, and had petite bodies. Even so, that didn't change the fact that the two girls were definitely above average. Issei cleared his throat and started his explanation about the uses of the divinity he left inside William. Right now, you are only able to use 25% of the power of the chess piece that I gave you, Issei stated in a serious tone. This has nothing to do with affinity, talent, or race. You simply don't have the qualifications to use its full power because you are still too young. Only when you come of age will the final seal on my divinity break and allow you to use its power to its maximum potential. Issei stood up from his seat and made a gesture. Abby, the one seated on Issei's left, glowed and transformed herself into a sword. The harem god firmly gripped the sword's handle and gave it a few swings. With each slash of his sword, several air blades materialized out of thin air and shot in the direction Issei aimed it. Issei made another gesture and Gabby, who was watching her lover's performance, smiled before transforming into a round shield. The shield flew towards Issei and the latter caught it with his left hand. The power of my divinity is the power of bonds, Issei said in a voice laced with tenderness and affection. The more intimate you are with your lover, the more powerful the connection will be. This will allow you to use powerful abilities that are exclusive to them. The two girls transformed back to their natural bodies and hugged Issei. The harem god held their waists firmly and gave both of them a kiss on the cheeks, before facing William. I'm not telling you to use your girlfriends as weapons, or pieces of armor. I'm just letting you know that anything is possible, as long as the bonds you have with them remain strong. Also, I have a feeling that if my divinity and Gavin's divinity work together, you might be able to temporarily pass your job classes to your lovers for a short period of time. Of course, this is not yet confirmed. You need to experiment with this after you return to your world. William's ears perked up when Issei mentioned that transferring his job classes to his lovers might be possible. He imagined Wendy using the power of the monk job class to beat up her twin brother, Spencer, and it improved his mood greatly. Seeing that William's mood had become better, Issei decided to show him what was currently happening inside his sea of consciousness. William looked at his pale-faced spirit body, that was currently being hugged by 3 girls. Wendy hugged his body from his right side, a beautiful mermaid with blue hair hugged him from the back, and a girl with silver-colored hair hugged him from the left. The 3 girls had their eyes closed as they channeled their spiritual energy around them. The energy was slowly being absorbed by the blue gem embedded in William's chest. William's gaze softened as he looked at the 3 girls who were doing their best to help him recover faster. William, you are loved, Issei commented. I'm sure that you already know what to do, so I will not interfere with your affairs. However, allow me to give you some advice. Women like it when the man they love tells them that he loves them. Don't just show, and make them feel, that you love them. Use words as well. Communication is the most effective way to keep a relationship healthy, do you understand? Yes, William replied as he nodded his head. Thank you. I will keep that in mind. Good. Since this is a special occasion, allow me to help you a bit. Remember, words are important, Issei reminded William as he placed his hand over his head. I will let you talk to them for a period of time, so make sure to let them know that you are safe. Something warm spread throughout William's body as he felt himself being pulled back by a strong force. Issei and his 2 lovers glanced at each other before leaving the room. They would give the young boy some privacy and let him settle his affairs with his girlfriends before his training officially started. Wendy, EST, and Ian had just finished channeling their spiritual energy to William, when they felt a gentle breeze brush against them. Soon, they heard a voice calling out to them. A voice that they had been wanting to hear since he lost consciousness. Thank you for watching over me. William's voice reverberated within his sea of consciousness, which made the eyes of the 3 girls widen in surprise. I don't have much time, so, please, allow me to talk without being interrupted. First off, I would like to apologize to the 3 of you. I could have prevented Carter from hurting all of you, but I decided to watch him from the side and allow his filthy spell to corrupt your consciousness. EST, I'm sorry. I could have dispelled the spell long ago and prevented you from suffering. Words cannot describe how much I hated myself for not killing Carter at an earlier time. Knowing you, I'm guessing that you might be riddled with guilt right now. I'm sorry for making you suffer. I'm sorry for making you feel guilty, and most of all, I'm sorry for not being there to apologize in person. William then explained everything from the beginning. How he discovered that Wendy was under the effects of a suggestion spell that was slowly invading her sea of consciousness and the hesitation he felt in dispelling the spell in its earlier stages. He explained how Carter tried to use the spell to have his way with Wendy, which forced William to take the matter in his own hands and purify the curse within her body. Chapter 295, Heart-to-Heart Talk Part 2. Sorry, Wendy, William's voice, that was riddled with shame and guilt, permeated within his spiritual world. I used you as bait in order to get close to Carter. I placed you in the way of great harm and he almost succeeded in forcing you to do things that you would have never done in your sober state. I don't know if you hate me right now, but know this, I will accept any punishment that you will give me once I recover. I'm sorry if you feel disillusioned with me. If you want to put an end to our relationship then I will accept it. I am the one at fault and I don't deserve someone like you in my life. Wendy clenched her fist and lightly pounded William's chest. She had forgotten that the half-elf had told them not to interrupt his words. The feelings in her heart had burst out, which caught the 2 girls beside her by surprise. If you want to apologize then open your eyes and apologize to me face to face. Wendy growled in frustration. I'll make sure to punch you without holding back until I have vented out all of my frustration. Are you trying to kill me? William's voice laced with helplessness whimpered. I'm only barely hanging on to life. One full-powered punch from you would immediately send me to the cycle of reincarnation. Wendy stopped her punches. Okay, I'll wait for you to recover then punch you. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Is this why you were feeling anxious? Is this why you were feeling guilty? You've been bottling all of these feelings inside you for a very long time and fighting this battle alone. Why? Don't you have any faith in me? I'm sorry, William apologized. I promise I won't do it again. Just, don't leave me, Wendy. Wendy buried her head on William's chest and cried. She had seen William's anxiousness throughout the entirety of the past week before the incident happened. She had seen the guilt on his face and the worries in his brows each time he looked at her. William's consciousness was hovering above them, and saw his girlfriend's pained expression. If he could only move his hands, he would have definitely wrapped them around her body and whispered words of apology in her ears. He then shifted his attention to the blue-haired mermaid who was hugging him from behind. His head was cradled on her chest. He watched as the gems embedded in his and Ian's bodies glowed in unison like the beating of a heart. Ian, thank you, William said. If you didn't give me half of your heart then I would have surely died. I heard your words and I promise you that I will fulfill it. I will take responsibility, but, can you please, give me some time? I don't want to do things half-heartedly. I want to do it right. I know that this might be sudden, but I would like to know more about you. Let's talk about these things slowly. Also, is this why you always quarreled with me? They say that love is just a thin line away from hate. Yeah, I guess even mermaids can't resist my charms. Being handsome is a sin. Ian shook her head helplessly because she knew that William was only trying to lighten up the depressing atmosphere. Even so, deep inside, she was happy. She could tell that William was serious when he said that he would take responsibility, and it made her feel that her sacrifice was worth it. A smile appeared on Ian's face as she patted William's head. I would like to know more about you, too, Ian whispered in William's ears. Don't argue with me all the time. It was you who always argued with me first, William grumbled. What did you say? Sorry, I was the one at fault. I will do my best not to argue with you again. That's better. Ian nodded and closed her eyes. She was feeling a little exhausted because she was the one that was handling the bulk of the spirit transfer to William's body. William then shifted his attention to the girl with silver-colored hair. You're very beautiful, William said. Your silver hair, and especially your eyes. I've never seen someone with eyes as red as yours. Snorted and closed the eyes that William had praised a few seconds ago. However, her hands that were embracing the boy's body remained firm. It was as if she was afraid that William's body would fly away if she loosened her grip even a little. I know that this might sound like a stupid question, but, I have to know. Are you really a girl? William asked with genuine curiosity. I was a girl, answered. But, I am currently under a powerful curse and have to remain a boy for life. I don't know how Ian managed to temporarily unseal the curse placed on her body, but I can only have this appearance inside your sea of consciousness. Who was it that placed a curse on you? Do you know? William's voice contained a hint of anger, which made EST feel like a little kitten was scratching her heart. I was cursed by a goddess. Her name? Lady Astrid. Understood. I will talk to her while I'm here. Hey. EST opened her eyes abruptly and gazed at the pale-faced boy. What do you mean you'll talk to Lady Astrid? Where are you right now? A chuckle escaped William's lips, but he knew better than to say that he was currently at the temple where the gods resided. EST, do you believe me? No. Why not? William inquired. You dare not believe this amazing half-elf? This handsome half-elf that could make all the girls in the academy swoon with a single wink. EST scoffed and flicked the unconscious spirit body's head in annoyance. Why should I believe in a womanizer? You already have Wendy, and Ian, now you want to have me, too? I'm not that cheap. William smiled at the stubborn girl that was clinging to his body. I have an idea, why don't the two of us make a bet? You and your stupid bets. I don't like to make bets with a womanizer. Don't be like that, listen to me first, William said in a voice that was similar to an adult coaxing a child. How about both of us make a promise instead? Go on, I'm listening, EST replied in a guarded tone. I will find a way to fully undo the curse on your, Ian's, and Isaac's bodies. After you turn back into a girl then you become my girlfriend. And if you are unable to undo the curse? William paused for a brief moment before answering. If I fail to undo the curse then you can make me your boyfriend. It's a win-win situation, don't you think? I have a better idea. A mischievous smile appeared on EST's face as she said her proposal. How about I ask Lady Astrid to turn you into a girl instead? That way, I can marry you. It's a win-win situation for both of us. What do you think? No. I will not allow William to be turned into a girl. Wendy commented from the side. He is going to marry me. My lady, I don't think this proposal is good, Ian interjected. Ian, you are still under the curse, EST reminded her retainer. At most, you can only stay in that form for 3 hours. The rest of the time, you will be a boy. If William turned into a girl then there would be no problem. We could just have him give birth to both our babies. It's a win-win situation for the both of us. Ian's heart wavered when she heard EST's words. It was true that she couldn't stay in her mermaid form for a long time. If she sided with EST, she would still be able to be intimate with William. Also, the thought of having the half-elf give birth to her babies sounded very tempting. No. Wendy rejected the idea with everything she had. I will not agree to this. I'm the first wife. I will not allow William to be turned into a girl. Tisk. Tisk. EST and Ian clicked their tongues, while William watched the three of them with a complicated expression. Naturally, he didn't want to turn into a girl, and he didn't want to give EST empty promises as well. For the time being, he decided to put the matter on hold until he had a proper talk with the goddess Astrid. In order to change the topic, William decided to inquire about what had happened after the incident. The gods didn't tell him anything, so he was curious about the aftermath of Carter's failed attempt to take over his body. The expressions on the faces of the three girls immediately became serious. They had completely forgotten about the affairs of the kingdom after they heard William's voice inside his sea of consciousness. William, the war has started, EST said with a sad expression. And it doesn't look good. We are currently being pushed back by the combined forces of the two dynasties. I'm afraid that it won't take long before their forces break through to our second line of defense. Currently, the Sword Saint and the Archmages are holding them back. Even so, I'm afraid that it will only take a week or two before Windsor Fortress falls. EST then narrated the series of events that followed the demon invasion in the academy. He now understood why David said that Wendy and the others were safe for now. On that day, William realized how dire the Helan Kingdom's current situation really was. Chapter 296, I can't die even if I want to. General, they are about to break through, an officer reported in a panicked voice. Just focus on the flying ants first, Gareth Brent, the great general of the Helan Kingdom, ordered. Although everyone around him was panicking, he alone had a calm expression on his face. Such was the willpower of the man who stood at the top of the military forces of the Helan Kingdom. His eyes glanced at the gate that was on the verge of collapse, before shifting his attention to the 3-meter-long ants that numbered in the thousands. Several ants had crawled over the fortress walls, causing the defenders to engage them in a life-and-death battle. Archers and magicians, eliminate the flying insects, Gareth said in a tone that snapped everyone from their panicked daze. It doesn't matter if they break through the gates. Gareth unsheathed the sword in his scabbard and raised it high. For the glory of the Helan Kingdom. Kill. Kill. The melee fighters redoubled their efforts as they slayed the ants that were climbing their fortress walls. The archers and magicians no longer hesitated and rained their attacks on the flying ants that were attacking them from the skies. 5 minutes later, a loud explosion reverberated amidst the shouts and cries in the battlefield. The soldiers from the Anisha dynasty came storming inside the fortress. The first wave of invaders hadn't even taken 20 steps inside the fortress before all of their heads were separated from their bodies. Fountains of blood erupted as the beheaded corpses fell down on the ground, painting their surroundings red with their blood. A man, wearing a black robe, stood at the main entrance of the fortress, holding a silver sword in his hand. Welcome to Windsor Fortress, Aramis Bran Caliban, the sword saint of the Helan Kingdom, said with a smile. Please, enjoy your stay, because this is the place where you are going to be buried. Aramis casually waved his sword and the bodies of hundreds of soldiers were split in two. Those who managed to survive the attack screamed in terror as they ran back out of the fortress. Unfortunately for them, Aramis had no intention of letting them go. He let out another sword strike to end the lives of the fleeting men, however, a powerful blow stopped his attack from reaching his targets. Don't you have any shame, Aramis? A grey-haired man materialized out of thin air and stood facing the sword saint of the Helan Kingdom. You've broken the unwritten rule. Saints aren't supposed to cut down those below the mithril ranks during times of war. Aren't you afraid of the consequences of your actions? Aramis chuckled as if what the man told him was a funny joke. He then pointed his sword at the grey-haired man and sneered. Consequences? Unwritten rules? Don't make me laugh, Emmerich, Aramis said in disdain. 2 dynasties attacking a single kingdom, without even a declaration of war, and you tell me about rules. Emmerich grinned and unsheathed his sword. You're right. There's no point in talking about rules at this point in time. Suddenly, the 2 sword saints vanished from where they stood. A resounding clash that sent shockwaves across the battlefield made the invaders and defenders alike brace themselves from the impact. Aren't you afraid that you'd be killing your own men if we fight inside this fortress? Emmerich said after gaining some distance away from his opponent. His right hand, that was holding the sword, felt numb from the initial clash he had with Aramis. It had been a long time since the 2 of them had crossed swords and, from his initial probing, Emmerich immediately realized that Aramis had increased his cultivation and was already a level stronger than him. I'm not afraid, Aramis replied. The moment the brave men of Helan stepped inside this fortress, they were all prepared to die. From the lowest soldier, to the highest general, they will fight to the death to defend our kingdom. What about you? Aren't you afraid to die? Emmerich sneered. Amaris snorted, I can't die even if I want to. Aramis once again raised his sword as his eyes glowed blood red. James had given him a nickname, Salamander, not because he hated him, but because Aramis was one pesky opponent that even the overlord of Lant found annoying. Aramis took a step forward and immediately appeared 4 meters away from Emmerich. He thrust his sword forward fearlessly and didn't care about the fact that the other sword saint of the Anisha dynasty had already snuck up behind him. Emmerich expertly parried the blow and prepared a counterattack. A sneer appeared on his face as he saw the blade of his partner pierce through Aramis' chest, while Emmerich's own sword pierced through Aramis' head. The 2 sword saints exchanged a look and smiled. They knew that Aramis was strong, but if they created the perfect trap for him, even a sword saint would die, or at least suffer a serious injury in the process. Emmerich was about to pull his sword out from his opponent's head when his eyes widened in shock. Are you Ark? Emmerich wasn't able to finish his words before the hand holding his sword was cut off from his body. His comrade didn't fare any better as a silver sword pierced through his chest. Why you? How? The sword saint that had stabbed Aramis from behind asked as he fell on his knees. Aramis didn't give him an answer, instead, the silver sword moved like a blur and separated his head from his body. Until the moment of his death, the sword saint still didn't realize how Aramis was able to escape their perfectly timed attack that destroyed both of his heart and brain at the same time. Emmerich didn't wait to see his partner's demise because he had already retreated from the battlefield. He decisively left the moment his hand was cut off, and focused his attention on his movement technique. Too bad, one got away, Aramis sighed as he stepped on the head of the sword saint, who had stabbed him in the back, and turned it into meat paste. He didn't stop there and breathed flames from his mouth to incinerate the dead body under his feet. As he burned the corpse into ashes, the gaping holes in his chest and head slowly regenerated. A minute later, Aramis was back to his usual self, with the exception of a bloodstain on his forehead and chest. Aramis then looked on top of the ramparts where the great general of the Helan Kingdom stood. Gareth gave him a brief nod before shifting his attention back to the battlefield. Both of them had roles to play and the war had just begun. The Anisha dynasty had 3 sword saints. One was dead, another had lost his dominant hand, and the third was somewhere else. Aramis regretted that he wasn't able to dispose of Emmerich because the latter had hastily retreated, while using his companion as cannon fodder to buy him some time to escape. It's fine, this will give us a little more time, Aramis thought as he stepped forward. A bugle horn sounded in the distance and the army of the Anisha dynasty made a hasty retreat. The defenders watched them go with hate-filled eyes, but they didn't dare to pursue them. They knew that their enemies would be back and, when that happened, another grueling battle would take place. There was a reason why James hated Aramis, and that was not just because the latter had fallen in love with the same woman as him. No, James hated Aramis because he was one of the few people that he couldn't kill within the entirety of the southern continent. Why? It was because the salamander of the Helan kingdom was nearly immortal. Even if one were to turn his body into meat paste, he would still rise and haunt you like a ghost out for vengeance. Not many people knew this. Their opponents only thought that he had a very strong regenerative ability that made him very hard to kill. That's why Emmerich and his partner had targeted his heart and brain at the same time, in order to kill him instantly. Alas, they didn't know anything about the curse that was placed on Emmerich's body. A curse that was placed on him by the woman he loved. The same woman that James married many years ago. The woman that had brought the two greatest men in the Helan kingdom to their knees and made them spill rivers of blood in her name. She was none other than Urza Anwen Aif, the undying witch that hailed from the Zealand dynasty. Chapter 297, First Familia Member Part 1. James whistled as he sat on top of the ramparts of the stronghold that bordered the Zealand dynasty. When the demons invaded the academy, the two dynasties, Anisha and Zealand, launched an invasion at the same time. The first fortress that defended against the Anisha army fell after 2 days. The survivors hurriedly regrouped at the Windsor fortress in order to resist the advance of the Anisha army that numbered in the millions. The bulk of their army was made up of ant-type beasts. This was the main reason why the first line of defense in the east was easily overrun. Although they did their best to resist, the sheer number of enemies outnumbered the defenders 200 to 1. Only when Aramis, and the archmages, arrived in Windsor fortress did the numbers of the ant army decrease drastically. As for the stronghold that was facing the Zealand army, they were able to hold out until James and Lawrence arrived as reinforcements. Together, the two managed to make the invaders temporarily retreat. The beast army was a little late in their mobilization and arrived late at the battlefield. This was why the defenders were able to endure until reinforcements arrived, forcing the Zealand army to retreat. Aren't you worried about Windsor fortress? Lawrence, Rebecca's grandfather and James' good friend, asked. I heard that it can collapse any moment now. James scratched his bum as he looked at the vast army that was slowly approaching the stronghold. I'm more worried about the enemy once that lizard gets serious, James replied without a care in the world. I hope they kill the bastard so I can spit on his grave. I've been dreaming of it for years. Lawrence sighed as he shook his head helplessly. He knew about the bad blood between James and Aramis and so did the other old fogies that had served the former king. The two were like oil and water, and would immediately attack each other if they were given an opportunity. Oh, what a big ox, James nodded in satisfaction as he appraised the towering giant in the distance. If I'm not mistaken, its name is Urchitu. Not bad, at least millennial rank. I wonder if I can use that ox to expand our farmlands. Hey, is an ox part of a herd? Herd? Well, I guess that you can consider a group of oxen a herd, Lawrence replied after eyeing the beast from afar. I didn't know you were interested in these kinds of things. James chuckled, but didn't say anything else. How could he possibly say that he was planning to catch the giant ox and give it to William? The boy had casually told him a few years ago that if James were to see a strong beast that belonged to the herd, he should catch it and bring it back to Lont, so that the half-elf could try his hand at taming it. Although James didn't fully understand how William would be able to tame a millennial beast, he was more than happy to agree to his grandson's request. Minotaurs, inferno bulls and 3 lamasu, James muttered as he scratched his head in frustration. Ha, forget it. I'll just knock them all out and drag them back to Lont so that William can take a look at them, once he wakes up from his coma. If they are useless, I'll just cook them to eat. Damien. Gideon. Yes, boss. Get some of those minotaurs later, and one of those lamasu, James ordered. Choose class B and above. Make sure to get the high-quality ones. I'll handle that Urchitu myself. Okay. Sure thing. The overlord of Lont then glanced at Jekyll who was busy flossing his teeth at the side. You stay here and guard the fortress. Don't eat any of the beasts. William might have a need for them. I'll think about it, Jekyll replied as he eyed the monster army. Some of them had caught his eye and he was also planning to bring them back to Lont to be used in his experiments. James massaged his forehead because Jekyll had that look on his face that screamed murder. He knew better than to get in the way of the dentist of Lont when he found something of interest. He sighed before facing his old friend, Lawrence. I'll leave the human armies to you. Leave the beast army to me. Lawrence nodded his head. Fine. Let's end this quickly. The 5 men stared at the 100,000 army in front of them as if they were just dealing with toddlers. Although there were existences within the Zealand army that were equal to them in strength, they were not the least bit worried about it. Why? Because James was there to oversee the battle. If he was so easy to kill, Aramis would have already done it long ago. The fact that James was still alive and kicking proved that he was a tough nut to crack. It has been a while since I saw the Beast Conqueror in action. Lawrence narrowed his eyes as he looked at his old friend. I swear to the gods, each and every member of the Ainsworth family is a freak of nature. I'm glad they are not my enemy. Okay, focus, Issei said with a serious expression. Don't force it. Let your consciousness slowly spread towards your body. The voice of the harem god whispered in William's ears as he slowly joined his consciousness with his spirit body. Issei was training William how to merge back with his body, so he could check on the current status of his king chess piece. The harem god insisted that, although William was still unable to use the full power of his divinity because he was still underaged, Ian's sacrifice made it possible for William to connect with her through the spirit core embedded inside his body. William felt lightheaded as his consciousness merged back with his spirit body. Although he was still unable to move his body, he was able to communicate with the system and ask it about certain things regarding the changes in his divinities. System, open the status of the king chess piece, William ordered. Opening chess piece status page. Accessing usable abilities. King's chess piece. King's Legion. Accolade. Familia, new. William didn't hesitate and asked the system to open the Familia option. He was curious what this new ability could do for him in his current state. Familia. Allows the host to harness the power of his bond with his Familia members. Depending on the strength of the bond, the host will be able to use his Familia's ability and vice versa. Familia. Available. Not available. Not available. Not available. Not available. Do you see it now? I was planning to wait for your coming of age ceremony before discussing this ability to you. But, since this is already here, it is time for you to train your bond with your mermaid lover. Issei said. However, there is a special condition when registering a nymph to your Familia. Nymph? William inquired. Ian is a nymph. Half nymph, Issei answered. But, a nymph nevertheless. In order to add her to your Familia, you need to know her true name first. Unlike humans, nymphs are bestowed a true name on the day of their birth. Issei's voice became extremely serious as he continued his explanation. Remember this, William, there are some beings in the world that are born with a true name. Whoever knows their name will be able to command them to do anything. William nodded his head in understanding. Although he had read similar things in novels before, this was the first time he would actually put it into practice. What's wrong? Issei asked after a few minutes passed in silence. Are you perhaps hesitating to have full control over the lives of others? Yes. Somehow, this feels wrong. Wrong? Are you stupid? Indecisive guys like you are the ones that get NTRD in real life. Since Ian has already given you half of her heart, you should take responsibility and not be a wishy-washy individual. Or, are you perhaps waiting for other men to know her true name? Of course not. It's just. I've been quarreling with her for a long time and have always treated her as a boy. Never did I dream that the boy who always picked a fight with me would someday turn into a mermaid and become my lover. It just feels unreal. Issei sighed, this is the problem with virgins. Once you graduate, you will never hesitate again. Obviously, you can't do that now. But, William, time waits for no one. It won't wait for you to be ready, or for Ian to be ready. Whether it is a mortal, or the gods, time will not wait for them. So, go already. Issei gave William a mental kick which forced his consciousness to merge with the blue gem embedded in his chest. Currently, Wendy and EST had gone to the front lines to assist the defenders because it was a critical time. They only stayed for a few days because they were worried about William. Now that they finally knew that he was safe, the two magicians returned to their duties as knights of the Helan Kingdom. They left William in Ian's care because she was the only one that could nourish his spiritual body. Within William's sea of consciousness, the beautiful mermaid laid on top of William with her chest touching his. The gems within their respective bodies were pressed against each other in order to make the spirit transfer more effective. The moment William's consciousness entered the spirit core, a jolt of electricity passed through Ian's body which made her body tremble. William? Ian asked with uncertainty. William had already told them that he didn't know when he could communicate with them again. Although Ian had attempted several times to communicate with him through her spirit core, the unconscious boy remained unresponsive. This was the first time since their first discussion that Ian got a reaction from him. It's me, Ian. There is something very important that we need to talk about. What is it? Do you regret it? William asked. Do you regret giving me half or your heart? William wanted to slap himself for asking such a cheesy question. He had thought of a lot of things he could say to start the conversation, but nothing came to mind. It was at that moment when this question suddenly appeared in his consciousness. Since William was currently in this conscious form, all the things that pop up inside his head were automatically spoken out loud. The half-elf watched as Ian's expression suddenly became serious. He waited with bated breath for Ian's answer. The answer that would take their relationship to the next level. Chapter 298, First Familia Member Part 2. Ian didn't answer William's question right away. Instead, she recalled the first time she met the red-headed shepherd who just happened to be going to the same temple as them. Back then, she didn't know why she felt irritated whenever she saw him. After pondering about it for a while, Ian might have become irritated when she saw the collar on William's neck. Just like elves, other humanoids like beastkins, and the more exotic creatures were sold as slaves. Ian was half human and half nymph. Her mother was a mermaid, while her father was a human mage that specialized in earth magic. Although such unions weren't rare, they were frowned upon by many. Just like the half-elves. Fortunately, Ian's and Isaac's nymph bloodline was stronger. They were more nymph than human and had the ability to take on human form. Due to the secret relationship between the ruling family and the nymphs of the kingdom, a certain agreement was made in order to strengthen their ties with each other. I regret not being able to take this collar off your neck using my own power, Ian sighed. You know, I hate slavery. Perhaps, I hate it more than you do. I wish that a day will come where all slave traders will be taken to the guillotine to be beheaded. That way, the next generation won't have to worry about getting abducted while walking on the streets and being sold to the nobility to become their playthings. No. William. I do not regret giving you half of my heart. So, don't make me regret my decision, understand? I won't, William replied. I promise. Ian closed her eyes and gently brushed the hair on William's head. 5 minutes passed in silence before Ian took the initiative to break the silence. Is there something you want to tell me? Ian inquired. I can feel your hesitation through the fluctuations coming from my spirit core inside your body. What's wrong? William sighed internally and decided to come clean. He told her about the newly awakened ability that had appeared after she had given him half of her spirit core. You want to know my true name? Ian was surprised, but it didn't last long. She had thought long and hard about this topic, even before William had asked her about it. One could even say that she had already made her decision the moment she gave him half of her heart. Yes. May I know your true name? William, do you know? Asking for my true name is the same as asking my hand in marriage. Are you sure you want to know? I want to know, William answered firmly. I promise I will take responsibility. I will not let you go, no matter what happens. Ian felt her heart skip a beat upon hearing William's sincere promise to keep her by his side. The beautiful mermaid lowered her head and whispered her name in William's ears. Although it was only the two of them inside his sea of consciousness, her cautious nature didn't allow her to say her true name out loud. Ashura, Ian whispered. Ashura dy Cordelia. With this, I now belong to you. Please, keep my name in your heart. I will, William replied. I promise. The king chess piece appeared above the two of them. Golden particles that were similar to snowflakes fell down on the two lovers as both of the spirit cores within their chests turned golden. Among nymphs, especially the mermaid race, giving one's heart to another person was a sign of love. Once that person made a vow of love to the mermaid, the color of the spirit cores would change, which signified that the two were now partners for life. It was also a sign that the gods had recognized their union. Familia. First Familia member. Ashura dy Cordelia. Host is able to use Wave Rider skill. Host is able to use Water Whip skill. Host has acquired Familia over Soul skill. Increase +10 enhancement bonus to all stats. Strength of stats and abilities will increase, or decrease depending on the synchronization rate between the host and his Familia member. Synchronization rate, 30%. William and Ian felt a stronger connection between the two of them as the king chess piece and the system synchronized together to register William's first Familia member. From now on, I'll call you Ash when it's just the two of us, or when you are in your mermaid form, William said. Also, call me Will from now on, okay? Ash, it's been so long since I heard my nickname, Ash replied with a smile. Deep inside, she was very happy. Although Wendy was William's first lover and had called dibs as his first wife, the bond that she and William shared now was that of a real husband and wife. William also understood this, but he wouldn't take back his word to the blonde beauty whom he promised could be his first wife. Ash also had no intention of making things difficult for Wendy and decided to just keep this secret in her heart. She was already feeling a bit guilty for taking a shortcut in order to make William her partner for life. Ash, I don't have much time left, William said softly. I understand, Ash replied as she planted a kiss on William's forehead. I'll wait for your return. Please, don't make me wait too long. I will do my best. Until then, please watch over my body for me. Don't worry. I won't let you cheat on me. See you soon, Will. The glow of the crystal in William's chest dimmed then faded away completely. It was now time for him to return to the Temple of the Gods to continue Issei's divinity training. Somewhere within the Temple of 10,000 Gods, a celestial beauty, wearing a black dress, sat on a black throne and looked into the distance. She was currently looking at a pink teddy bear holding a water whip in its hands. A mischievous smile could be seen on her face. Her eyes, which were darker than black, locked onto the precious soul that resided inside the stuffed toy's body. The beautiful woman watched as the teddy bear accidentally wrapped its body with the water whip in its hand. Clearly, the teddy bear was not used to its current body and was having trouble using the whip as a weapon. A giggle escaped the lady's lips as she watched the teddy bear's futile attempts to free itself from the whip that had turned it into a spring roll. William was not aware that one of the primordial gods within the temple had taken a keen interest in him. A goddess that would one day make her presence known, not only to William, but the entire world of Hestia. Chapter 299, One-Sided Massacre. How is the progress of the collection of souls, that died on the battlefield, going? Everything is proceeding smoothly, sir. It's quite unfortunate that we didn't meet our goal in building the required altars, but that can be compensated by increasing the number of souls that we collect from the ongoing war. The man who sat on the throne nodded his head. What about the key? Do we have any news? The agents that are currently monitoring the two princes say that both of them are doing their best to acquire the key, a man wearing a black robe reported. Unfortunately, the timing of the war has caused them delays because the king is always with his war council. There have not been any opportunities for them to ask, or look for the key without making it look suspicious. The man sitting on the throne leaned back and tapped his finger on the armrest. Tell them that they have exactly 1 week to find it. At the end of the week, if the key is still not in their hands, they can forget about our deal. As you command. The black-robed man bowed his head and left the room. The man sitting on the throne watched him go with a calm expression. The reason he gave the two princes an ultimatum was because they couldn't hold off their plan for too long. According to the archmages in their organization, it would take 1 week for them to fine-tune the altars and invoke the continental spell that they had prepared. The harvesting of souls was proceeding smoothly. Originally, they would only need 100,000 souls at most if all of the altars were built. Unfortunately, they had greatly underestimated the efficiency of their agent's ability to instigate the war. Since that was the case, they would just need to gather more souls in order to make up for the lack of altars. 1,000,000 souls. This was the number of souls that they needed in order to activate the spell that would bring the entire southern continent to its knees. Originally, they were worried that they wouldn't be able to meet the target. Fortunately, one of the myriad beasts participating in the war was an ant queen. With the ability to give birth to thousands of eggs a day, it was able to raise an army of hundreds of thousands that destroyed the first line of defense of the Helan kingdom. Even now, the Windsor fortress was nearing its destruction even with the sword saint there to protect it. The might of a single person would not be enough to hold off an army of over 1,000,000. Especially if this army had several centennial and millennial beasts under the protection of the two remaining sword saints of the Aenisha dynasty. Magicians, open fire! Gareth, the great general that commanded the defense of Windsor fortress, roared amidst the screams of the ant army that had advanced to the walls of the fortress. A myriad of spells from different elements rained down on the ant army with fury. The barrage seemed unending, but looking at the sea of ants that were steadily making their advance, their resistance looked like a futile attempt to prevent the inevitable. Over 20 millennial ants steadily crawled towards the fortress, and their eyes burned with bloodlust. However, they were not the only high-level beasts in the Aenisha army. 15 more millennial flying ants hovered above the battlefield, which made the defenders almost lose hope. If not for the Sword Saint, the 6 archmages of the north and east, the aerial cavaliers from Frisia, the Griffin Brigade, and the reinforcements of the Royal Academy that had arrived in the nick of time, Windsor Fortress might have fallen already. The bombardment of the 2nd and 3rd years is almost over, EST announced. 1st years prepare your spells. 4th years, get ready. Matthew declared. Hundreds of spells were activated simultaneously as the 1st years and 4th years waited for their head prefect's next orders. EST and Matthew watched the burning ant army in front of them as they waited for the right time to unleash the spells that they had prepared. A minute later, the first round of bombardment had ended, and the 2nd and 3rd year students of the magic division backed away to replenish their mana reserves. As soon as they stepped back, the 1st years and the 4th years stepped forward to take their place. Open fire! EST and Matthew ordered simultaneously. A rain of spells descended on the battlefield and slaughtered everything in their path. After the incident at the Grand Colosseum, the king didn't order the Royal Academy to mobilize right away. The shock and anger that the magic division experienced on the day of the inter-division battle rendered them unable to immediately participate in the war. Simon, the dean of the academy, had announced that a demon had possessed Carter's body. He added that the demon used an elaborate scheme to put the majority of the magic division under his control and force them to betray their comrades through the use of a powerful spell. Several high-level spirit users were dispatched to the academy in order to fully neutralize the lingering effects of the Mindweaver spells from their bodies. The revelation given by the dean made the students very angry and caused them to hate the demons even more. They also mourned the loss of the talented professor who had fallen into their hands. Since the war had taken a turn for the worse, the king was once again forced to call upon the students of the academy to defend their homeland. Although a week was not enough to wash away the frustration that the magic division had felt, there was nothing they could do but participate in the war that had broken out. Wendy and EST decided to let Ian remain by William's side in order to continue his recovery. All the students had been mobilized to participate in the war, and Priscilla was chosen to temporarily command the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign, which had also been sent to Windsor Fortress. Show them the might of Frisia, the captain of the aerial knights shouted as the hippogriff formation charged towards the flying ants in the sky. Flying beside them was the Anglo-Ryan Knight Order led by Priscilla. Due to William's efforts, the aerial knights of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign had several mock battles against the Griffin Brigade which allowed them to gain battle experience when fighting with their mounts. This was their first official battle. The young knights under Priscilla's command felt anxious because William wasn't there. Although Priscilla was present to command them, she couldn't replace William's invincible image in their minds. Priscilla knew this, but there was nothing she could do at the moment. I know that all of you are feeling anxious, but you should focus your attention on the enemies in front of you, Priscilla said with a determined voice. The commander didn't train all of you to die meaningless deaths. Let's show everyone the might of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign. Kill them all. Kill. The captain of the Griffin Brigade laughed as he raised his spear. You bastards, make sure not to lose face in front of the kids. Death to our enemies. Death. The aerial defenders and the insect swarm collided. Blood rained down from the sky as shrieks and screams reverberated all over the battlefield. The battle lasted for 3 hours before the Aenisha army was forced to retreat once again. However, they had successfully destroyed the walls of the fortress, leaving it open for their next invasion. If not for the fact that Aramis had successfully killed Emmerich, at the cost of the thousands of brave Helan soldiers that had accompanied him in a suicide charge towards the center of the enemy's formation, the Aenicians wouldn't have opted for a retreat. The archmages accompanying Aramis had also thrown caution to the wind and unleashed 8th circle spells that attacked both friend and foe alike. These frenzied attacks deterred the general leading the Aenisha army and forced him to order a retreat. Although the main bulk of their forces were the ant army, Aramis and the archmages ignored the ants and focused on killing the human soldiers. After a one-sided massacre and the loss of a sword saint, they had no choice but to retreat in haste and in the fear that the berserked archmages would wipe all of their human resources off from the face of the world. The suicide charge bought the defenders a few days of reprieve, but it was not enough to prevent the inevitable. 3 days later, Windsor Fortress finally fell and the surviving defenders were forced to retreat. They made their way to Ravenlord Citadel, the last fortress that stood between the Aenisha army and the capital of the Hellan Kingdom. Chapter 300, Fall in Love All Over Again. 2 days before the fall of Windsor Fortress. Will. Ash stuttered as she looked at the cute teddy bear in front of her. A/N, this may take you guys a bit of getting used to, but I will shift to calling Ian as Ash when she's in her mermaid form, or when she's alone with Will. Yes, it's me, Will nodded. There's an impo, hey. Don't pick me up. Ash ignored Will's protest and twirled around holding the teddy bear in her hands. She then pressed William to her chest and squashed him to oblivion. So cute! Ash exclaimed. William sighed internally and allowed Ash to have her way with him. It was then when a chuckle was heard around them and Issei appeared with his twin lovers by his sides. Sorry to disturb your happy moment, but we're in a bit of a rush, Issei said with a smile. Young lady, I'm Will's big brother. You may call me Issei. Ash immediately summoned her spirit sword and put up her guard. She could feel a very strong divine power coming out from Issei's body, and she understood that the person in front of her was a very strong existence. Good. Issei nodded his head in approval. Your reaction was on point. As expected from my brother's partner. William, who was currently being held in Ash's firm embrace, patted her chest in order to calm her down. Don't worry, he's not an enemy, William explained. He is my big brother and he takes good care of me. Ash lowered the weapon in her hand, but kept her guard up. She wasn't a little girl that would trust strangers as soon as she met them. Seeing that Ash had calmed down, Issei crossed his arms over his chest and grinned. Like I said earlier, we are in a bit of a rush, Issei stated. Young lady, I pulled your spirit from your body and brought you here to my domain. However, your spirit cannot leave your body for a long time, so I prepared something that will help you remain here for an extended period of time. But before that, allow me to tell you why you're here. You see, William is currently undergoing training about how to use the powers he gained from your union. Naturally, he won't be able to utilize them properly unless you are here. Because of that, I decided to forcefully bring you here to ensure that his training will be a success. Are you following me so far? Ash frowned, but she still nodded her head. She would listen first before she decided on how to interact with her partner's big brother. Issei cleared his throat and continued his explanation. Your soul can only stay for half of a day each day and for no longer than a week. Due to not wanting to harm your soul, half a day in your world will be 3 days inside my domain. Of course, I will not force you if you don't want to help William by participating in his training. Everyone is entitled to a choice, so I'll give you 2 minutes to decide. There's no need to wait, Ash replied. I will help Will with his training. Excellent choice. Issei clapped his hands and looked at the teddy bear in the young lady's hold. I got to hand it to you, little brother, your girls love you very much. The teddy bear raised its chin in an arrogant manner in acknowledgement of Issei's words. This is what you call charisma, big brother, William replied. Just one smile from me and all the girls in the academy will line up to give me a kiss. Ash grabbed the teddy bear's leg and dangled it upside down in irritation. Issei chuckled as he watched at the two's shenanigans before waving his hand to bring William and Ash inside his special domain. After a brief flash of light, William and Ash found themselves in a familiar place. The two of them stood in William's destroyed sea of consciousness. I temporarily linked William's sea of consciousness with my domain in order to keep the young lady's soul from weakening, Issei said as he appeared along with the twin ladies by his sides. Right now, William doesn't have any sort of power. Also, fighting for an extended period of time will hasten the destruction of his sea of consciousness. In order to prevent that from happening, he has to use an outside source of power. That is where you come in, young lady. Issei pointed at Ash with a serious expression on his face. Since the two of you are linked through your spirit core, the synchronization rate of both of your body and soul has reached the minimum requirements for the Familia Oversoul. Instead of explaining, Issei kissed the lips of the twins by his sides and uttered 2 words. Familia Oversoul. The bodies of the 2 girls became ethereal and merged with Issei's body. Soon, the silhouette of 2 girls wielding swords and shields, each, hovered behind Issei's body. It's similar to aura intent, William muttered as he narrowed his eyes to observe the 2 spirits that were floating behind the harem god. But, it feels more like magic power. Spirit power, Ash corrected. That's spirit power and not magic power. Although they feel the same, the method behind the 2 is different. Issei nodded his head, correct. This power can only be used if the bond between me and my lovers reaches a certain threshold. The stronger the bond, the stronger the powers that will manifest after a successful fusion are. This is the thing that the 2 of you need to master within 1 month. Whether you succeed in mastering this ability or not, both of you will be evicted from this domain when the 1 month is over. William and Ash exchanged a glance and nodded their heads. The teddy bear then looked at his big brother and asked the question that he had been meaning to ask. Big brother, how can we strengthen our bond? William inquired. The grin on Issei's face widened as he looked at William and the young lady that was holding his temporary vessel. The fastest way is for the 2 of you to embrace each other's body. Issei chuckled. But since both of you are underaged, and I don't want the FBI God to arrest my little brother, the 2 of you can just settle for hugs and kisses for the time being. Naturally, you need to practice merging as well. The only advantage is that, since my domain is linked to William's spirit world, he will be able to manifest a bit of his spirit powers to keep your connection stable. I'll return after the 2 of you manage to perform the Familia Oversoul. At the very least, a 50% synchronization rate is needed to make it happen. Issei waved his goodbye and disappeared in the blink of an eye. He wanted to give the two newlyweds some privacy, so they wouldn't have to worry about someone eavesdropping on their intimate interactions. After Issei left, the teddy bear's body glowed and increased its size. Soon, it transformed into William's true form, which surprised both of them. Don't worry, Will, Issei said via telepathy. I'm going to give you a freebie because I know that it is hard to be touchy with your lover, while you're in that teddy bear's body. No need to thank me. Just make sure to do your best and score first base. As for the second base, that is a grey area. I'll leave it to your discretion. Have fun. William's face reddened when he heard Issei's words. His feelings for Ash were still in the initial stages, but he knew that since the deed had already been done, he needed to take responsibility and care for her for the rest of his life. Ash, William said softly as he held her hand. I will do my best. So, please, have more faith in me. I promise you that I will cherish you for the rest of my life. Ash smiled as she rested her head on William's chest. Ever since that battle with the Terror Hand, I knew that you were someone that I could depend on with my life. Perhaps, that was also when I fell in love with you. Will, I'm scared. This is the first time I felt this way. I don't know what to do. It's fine, William patted her back and kissed her forehead. Let's start slow, okay? Okay, Ash replied as she buried her head in William's chest. Both of them understood that they couldn't rush their relationship, but that didn't mean that they couldn't take that first step, to remove the anxiety that they felt in their hearts. Ash looked up and closed her eyes. Her heart beat wildly inside her chest as she waited for her lover to remove the fears and doubts inside her. William lowered his head and kissed her lips. The kiss only lasted for a few seconds, but it was more than enough for Ash to understand the feelings behind it. The insecurities that she had been bottling up slowly melted away as she took the initiative to kiss him back. Ash wouldn't admit it, but ever since William had made Wendy his lover, she felt extremely envious and jealous of her. Now, she didn't have to worry about that anymore. William's actions assured her that he was taking their relationship seriously. With this, the haze in her heart and mind finally disappeared as she surrendered herself to her lover's passionate kisses, that made her fall in love with him all over again.